The WWF, what the world is watching. Turn it on and rip the knob off.
Guys, and welcome back to the Wrestling Memory Grenade, now at episode 152. I am Ray Russell, and this week, it's a new year, and as promised, that means special guests from time to time to help me break down this Hulkamania era project we have going right now, and we're smack dab in the middle of October 1988 in the World Wrestling Federation, and this week, our very first guest of 2025. You've likely heard him on the Two-Man Power Trip podcast, doing interviews every week. Just celebrated the 10th anniversary show last week. Congratulations. With a very special guest and one Bret, the Hitman Hart. Plus, you've heard him on the Hogan Era podcast, discussions with the likes of Vince Russo, Dr. Tom Pritchard. You may know by now, the Poz-man cometh. Please welcome. Going to do a virtual handshake. Kind of make a formation of the mega powers right here this week on the Grenade. Please welcome the one and only John Poz to the show. John, welcome to the WrestleCopia Podcast Network. Welcome to the Wrestling Memory Grenade.
Thank you for having me. Appreciate it. A long time coming.
Oh my God, yes. So, I've been following your stuff online, and we might as well talk about that right out of the gate. Some of the stuff you've done going back at least, it feels like at least 10 years now, right? 2014 at least.
Coming up on 10 years, actually, exactly 10 years as we're speaking right now. It's exactly 10 years, crazily enough. Even a little bit before that, did some blogging, did some interviews, but nothing wasn't audio until 2015. So literally 10 years exactly. Pretty crazy.
Yeah, that's insane. It's so good. So it's kind of like your anniversary and a new year here on the Grenade as well. Some new things going on and bringing in some special guests. And you're a very special guest because you have your own podcast, of course, one of them being the Hogan Era. So I felt this was right up your alley, and I figured, well, it ain't going to hurt. All he can do is say no if he's too busy. But to my delight, you said, absolutely, I'd love to come on here and talk a little old school 80s wrestling.
Can't turn that down. You know what I mean? Old school 80s wrestling. The Hogan era, if you will. I know everybody likes to refer to, not everybody, but some people like to refer to it as the golden era of wrestling, the greatest era ever in history of the business. I feel like it's the era that set it off for modern day wrestling. Without this era, who the hell knows where we would be without the Hogan?
Yeah, well said. The national expansion era, and especially specifically once Hogan came in and forward and everything we've seen evolve. I actually started in 1989 NWA. We covered some ground, but eventually we went back to the beginning of 87. And we've covered every house show result, every TV episode, everything that exists out there. And we covered all of 1987, and now we're into October of 1988. So it's been a long time coming the last few years here on the Grenade. And I'm just so happy to have you on board as this for me begins my peak childhood memories. And for those of you that thinks WrestleMania, rock and wrestling era, it peaked and it just kept going up, and then eventually down into the early 90s. There were peaks and valleys along the way. 86 started to and then it was WrestleMania 3 that shot it back up. And then after covering week after week of everything they were doing, you could easily see post WrestleMania 3, they lost so many of their semi-main baby faces for various different reasons for lengthy periods of time. It just felt like a stale product for about 6 months before things started evolving again. And it's been a rebuilding era. But as we're going to see here now, John, into the fall of 88, this was for me, my best memories, 88 through 1990 as a kid, because I feel like we're going to start seeing the final remnants of who's going to be joining and leaving the company for the next couple of years.
So interesting. Same thing. We're probably right around the same age. But same thing. Like 86 is when like my memories first really started to form. I guess you're like basically 4 years old. So now I start to remember stuff and you're really starting to absorb it. But even when I go back and watch stuff, I always go 88, 89, 90. That's like my starting point. I don't know why. And I love WrestleMania 3, but I don't know why. I just love 88. Love Hogan, obviously. He's got a wrestling, but I love the huge Savage babyface push, which happens towards the end of 87, but really into 88. And then it's just like the Mega Powers, boom! And then, of course, the breakup of the Mega Powers. But those 3 years, for whatever reason, I just love that era, 88, 89, 90.
Yeah, we're on the same page, so that's awesome. Hopefully, it's a fun ride here this week for everybody as we kick things off with the WWF Superstars of Wrestling, October 8th, 1988. All right, here we are, guys. Superstars, October 8th, 88, tape back September 13th, Indianapolis, Indiana, Market Square Arena, one of the more popular TV taping arenas by most involved, as would say. And we kick it right off with the brand new Intercontinental Champion, the Ultimate Warrior, taking on Gene Ligon, a Crockett country favorite there on the enhancement side. Warrior beginning to randomly run the ropes as the bell sounds, and Ligon decides, I'm going to try to clothesline this guy. Well, UW going to no-sell that clothesline, and it looks like he's going to try to hot-shot Ligon, but of course it's the Warrior, and they overshoot it, and he winds up backdropping poor Ligon all the way out to the floor. Moments later, back inside the Gorilla Press drop, and the big splash going to get the win here for UW, the new IC champion. Match goes a minute 48. Now, I know you had to have been a Hogan fan, but
yes.
Did that mean you couldn't be a Warrior fan as well?
So here's the very interesting part. For some reason, I have a friend of mine who's a bigger Warrior fan than a Hogan fan. And I said, how the hell is that even humanly possible? For some reason, I can't equate it. I know, obviously, there was, because if you ever, you've seen it, but anybody out there hasn't, WrestleMania 6, there's a huge Warrior contingent. There's a huge Hogan contingent. There's some fans that were cheering for both. But it's one of those things where, to me, you're either one or the other. Before he became world champion, you could root for Warrior and like him. But when he starts clotheslining Hogan by accident and leaning that way, that's when I turned on Warrior a bit. When he beats Hogan and left me literally dismayed for the entire night after WrestleMania 6, me and a friend of mine too, we were just like distraught. Like we didn't know what to do with this. So I can't believe Hogan lost. So that would be did not like Warrior. But at this point, IC champ, I did like him. And I thought he was charismatic as hell. As a kid, you're like, yeah, this guy's awesome. I don't know what he's talking about. I don't know what he's saying, but his frenetic energy, his nervous energy, whatever you want to call it, he just can't stop moving. I love this guy. He's like human ADD, with a kid with ADD. It's great. It's like, this guy's awesome. He doesn't stop moving. He's like me.
Yeah. This is going to be counterpoint for anybody who's listened long term to me. They know that I was never much of a Hogan fan, even as a kid.
Wow.
He was there, but I just never really latched onto him. It was Junkyard Dog in 84, 85. It was, Rowdy Piper. It was all these other guys that came. It wasn't, I don't know what it was. I just loved all and the Warrior, and my brother will eventually be listening to this episode. He was a Warrior guy too. I mean, that was it for us. So at WrestleMania 6, we couldn't have been in a bigger place in heaven than knowing that the Warrior pinned Hulk Hogan. Yeah, it was a big deal for us. So
I actually was so mad, and he wrestled Savage the next year, obviously. Yes. I wanted Savage to win. Who cares if Savage is the heel? I wanted, and then I was doubly pissed that he beat Savage and his career. I'm like, this guy is beating all my favorite wrestlers. All my heroes.
Oh man, so instant heel credibility there for some. I went to school with the Warrior shirts on, so I was on the other side of the fence. But I never it wasn't like Biggie and Tupac. I didn't hate the other guy for liking Hogan. I got it because I could see all the Hulkamaniacs, right? I liked my guys, and you can like yours, and I'm okay with that. Unlike most of society nowadays, where you have to fall in line. But we won't get into all that here on the program. We're going to talk a whole lot more about the Warrior upcoming here later in the show, John, because we're going to talk about his feud with the Honky Tonk Man. But right now, we're going to go back to Update with Mean Gene Okerlund. This week's topic, the Hercules Ted DiBiase debacle from last week. As we're going to go to a replay from last week's segment featuring Hercules and some comments.
All right, on the heels of that incident that occurred last week, we got comments this week from none other than the mighty Hercules.
Ted DiBiase, no amount of money and no amount of pain you can inflict on me can make the mighty Hercules any man's slave. This time, Ted DiBiase, you will be the one to pay the price. Vengeance will be mine.
All right, so there it was, the mighty Hercules informing Ted Dibiase, John. He says that there is no amount of money, no amount of punishment or pain inflicted upon him that can make Hercules someone's slave. And Hercules promising that vengeance will be his. Hercules now a babyface. What did you make of Hercules in general, and what did you make of the babyface Hercules?
Loved Hercules. Always was a big fan. He just looks like what a wrestler should look like. He's jacked. He just looks like $1 million. Just loved his look. He had charisma. It wasn't much of a promo guy, but I did like his promos. I just thought like short and sweet, and he was usually good. The chain was awesome. Everything about it. This angle, I just remember this even as a kid, is like trying to buy this guy. Like what? Like you can't even like realize. Like well, I don't even know what's going on. He's trying to buy this. You can't do that. And then you think, as an adult, you're like, they did a slave angle. Like this is crazy. You know, like what are they doing? But awesome angle. Just kind of totally proves that DiBiase is like the most evil person. I can just buy and sell people, and like you know, and then if you don't do it, I'm going to beat your ass. And like, I just thought this was a great angle, great feud. Kind of elevated Hercules as DiBiase was kind of elevated, obviously with Hogan and Savage, and getting up to main event level. I feel like it elevated Hercules from the kind of like that upper mid card to a little bit higher up on the card, a little bit more higher echelon.
I don't think he gets enough credit as a worker. People see the muscles and they presume he was muscle bound his entire career, and that was simply not the fact. If you go back and watch, Hercules could actually work, and he had some really good matches. Even the stuff with Billy Jack Haynes wasn't too bad. You know, if you go back and watch some of the house show stuff they were doing. But everybody, and obviously the people involved, the characters involved, Ted DiBiase, of course, Bobby Heenan, everybody does an excellent job in that segment of selling this, even though it's kind of ludicrous that you believe you couldn't buy a belt, but apparently you can buy a human being. And so
kind of just shows he does whatever he wants, or he thinks he's doing whatever he wants. Heenan was great though. His face is like he's like deadpan, like I sold you. You're a loser. Like I'm done with you. Yeah, so good.
Que sera, whatever will be, more on that later as well. Some comments made by Bobby Heenan on the primetime. Of course, Bobby Heenan did a great job of selling everything on primetime. It really helped all the feuds that he was involved in. But we're going to roll on for now. We're going to come back to everything as we continue on. Right now, we go back to the ring for Dino Bravo, the Canadian strongman, managed by Frenchie Martin at this point, taking on John Latu. And as it appears, Frenchie has traded in his USA is not okay sign in favor of a brand new flag of Quebec, perfect for the feud upcoming with Hacksaw Jim Duggan, of course, the American flag. Now, during this matchup, we get an insert promo from Bravo, who reiterates what I just said, basically taking enjoyment of going to be able to wave that Quebec flag high across the world, but especially here in the United States, of course. And Latu actually going to catch Dino off guard, landing a couple of hip tosses and a nice drop kick to get it going, but Bravo back up and overpowering Latu, taking over on control, landing a pile driver and that patented side suplex. Going to get the win here, 139. Dino Bravo. Give me your take on memories of Dino Bravo during this heel run and even more specifically the feud with Duggan.
He looked like $1 million. I just never really thought maybe too big in WWE, got too kind of muscular. Just was not the same guy. He was not really a good worker at all. I don't know why I hated him like with a passion. Well, I do know why, because he was a heel. He's from another country, but I really, really hated him as a kid. I never really liked him as an adult either. I just, for some reason, just never a Dino Bravo guy. Yeah. Love Duggan though, obviously charisma through the roof. I just never got into Bravo. I always hated him.
Before my time, before I was even born, Dino Bravo had that run in the 70s in the WWF, and it was those Coliseum videos, specifically the Tag Team Champions video and a couple others, I believe, where he had the dark hair. And we got to see him actually work. And then later on, other video, during the tape trading era, more videos came out of, Bravo's work prior to this run. And I said, oh my God, this guy, I actually enjoyed his stuff. He was pretty mobile. Like you said, he muscle bound at the very least. And It's progressively gotten worse since he's been back here since 86. We've seen it just progressively, the bumps where he just kind of looks like an LJN figure taking a bump. There's no move, it's just looks like, oh, that looks like it's got to hurt, and not a whole lot to Bravo, but when they paired him with Earthquake, I thought that was the most brilliant thing you could do. Just kind of make him not really the lackey, but the sidekick, I guess you could say, of Earthquake there. But it was just something about Vince's passion for Dino Bravo. He protected him on the pay-per-views. I don't know that the guy took a pinfall loss until he was basically getting close to being Hulk Hogan schoolboyed him at Survivor Series 90. That may have been his first loss on pay-per-view by pinfall anyway.
crazy, like how strong he was booked. I always was kind of fascinated by that. Like he's beaten Garvin, he's beaten Muraco, like he's beaten all these guys. You're like, why Dino Bravo? Why such a big push? Very strange, very, very strange. And the earthquake thing is good because it kind of made him second fiddle to this huge monster who's actually drawing pretty good with Hulkster. So it's one of those weird kind of things in my head that I'm always like, why did they love Dino Bravo so much? Did Vince just love that he was so like legitimately strong, like that he just had to push him? I don't know. It's strange. Like, hey, this guy could outlift me in the locker room or in the weight room, pal. Like, I'm going to give this guy a push. Like, it must be like, hey, I can lift 500. This guy can lift 550.
I love it, pal.
Yeah.
The feud here with Duggan basically begins right now. Nothing really heated has happened yet. I don't remember if anything really provokes it beyond that evil country of Quebec up there against the United States. But, I go back and it starts here and it never really ends. Like Duggan is always and forever feuding with Dino Bravo. We see at WrestleMania 6. Again, Duggan's lumped into that feud somehow with Earthquake and Dino Bravo from time to time. So Duggan is always around Dino Bravo from now until basically the end of 1990 at least.
Very strange. I don't know why. I guess they just love the USA-Canada feud, the USA-Quebec feud. They love keeping that going. Just, I guess it's too easy for them just to keep that going. But it is strange that they just had that way too long. Sometimes I love when they have like long feuds, but sometimes it's just like, why is this going on forever?
Excellent. I have to totally agree. We're on board with everything except for the Hogan Warrior band camp.
Yes,
that's okay.
I got to change your mind on that.
I don't know that that's going to happen. You can't teach an old dog new tricks, but we can go to the event center with Sean Mooney standing by. We're going to hear from the brand new character to hit the airwaves here, talking about the African Dream, Akeem, along with managers. Along with his manager Slick. We're also going to hear from the Olympic strongman Ken Patera.
And welcome to the WWF Event Center. Hello, everyone. I'm Sean Mooney. There is a man here in the World Wrestling Federation who has taken on a dramatic change. He is now known as Akeem. Right now, he is standing by with his manager, the Doctor of Style, and they say that this is going to change the course of wrestling history.
Jiving is what we're about, but it ain't what we're all about, because the homeboy is about dishing out pain. Meet wrestling's latest brother. Oh, yes, and he is a brother. The only difference between me and him is that he's medium rare and I'm well done. But he knows how to get the job done. Right, homeboy? Right. You right on, brother. Give me some dab. Hey, let me tell you something, brothers and foxy mamas. This is Akeem talking to you, and I'm talking especially to the wrestlers in the WWF. I've been reborn. I've seen the light, so watch out. He has seen the light.
You talk about a transformation. Akeem, he is out there in the World Wrestling Federation. We will see what effect it will have on the WWF. Also, Olympian Ken Patera. He is climbing his way to the top. Let's hear from the former Olympian.
You know, I become very patriotic when I watch our American athletes compete in the Olympic Games and World Championships. But my hat's off to our athletes in South Korea. My praise goes out to you. You know, there's an old saying, bigger, faster, stronger. Well, with each passing generation, you have to be bigger, you have to be faster, and you definitely have to be stronger in order to compete with the rest of the world in all athletics, especially amateur athletics, and which is the epitome of the Olympic Games. So all you little boys and girls out there, don't ever forget you can do it. Always hold your head up strong. Always hold it up high. Because you're not losers, you're all winners. No matter what your efforts are, no matter what you're competing in, you know that you can be winners, and always keep that attitude. Okay, because I did it, I achieved, I went there, you can too.
Ken Patera, the former Olympian. Right here, the year of the Summer Olympics, it brings to mind all the great things that Ken Patera did in the Olympic Games as well as the World Games. He has transferred that into the ring, and he is a superstar here in the World Wrestling Federation. We've got more action coming your way. Stay tuned.
All right, so first we'll discuss Kenny Patera here. He talks the hard work you've got to put in to be someone like an Olympian such as himself. Kenny encouraging all the little, let's call them Pateraites out there. They too can succeed, pal, if they put in the effort. You too can be a winner. Ken Patera, not really made for the late 80s WWF.
I don't know what they're going for here, like a 70s-esque, like pure babyface gimmick where whatever he says, they'll pop and they'll cheer. It's just too corny, just didn't quite fit.
I laugh because you said, the babyface type deal here. Ken Patera's anything but I don't know that he knows how to cut a face promo from everything I've heard since he's been back here for a year and a half. And the things he's doing in the ring is even heel-rific. So I don't know. Patera wasn't that great when he got back here after prison. But after that arm injury in the summer of '87, he's been almost immobile, on top of not really being all that great since he's been back. Anyway, it's a case of most people come out of the prison system even in better shape. They got nothing else to do. But Kenny's just, I don't know. He saw better days. I was a huge fan of the heel blonde Patera, the look.
Yes,
and
versus
some
Hogan,
of the work.
especially. Yeah.
Yep. He had a lot of good matches, going back, you can watch, even with Backlund. And I wasn't the biggest Backlund guy, but his matches with Backlund, and some of the other guys that knew how to work. He had some good match, but man, if you held a gun to my head and asked me to, or a grenade in this fashion to my head and asked me to pick one opponent, one good match that he's had since he's been back here, May of '87, I think it was, May of '87, I couldn't think of one of them.
I don't know either, to be honest. I can't even think of one that really. My favorite was when he's a heel with Heenan and he's shooting with Hogan, basically, and that's years before, and that's before he got arrested. So, yeah, not good, not a good run.
No, and because of his longevity and being the veteran in most cases in these matches, the other opponents must be allowing him to call the finish, because every finish that he loses in for the last 4 or 5 months straight, every house show, every televised finish is Ken Patera missing a corner charge, busting his shoulder, and then taking their finisher or some other type of move and doing the job. So it's the same finish every night for Ken Patera, as he'll be making his way out. He's going to finish up at the Survivor Series. But a guy who just arrived, sort of, the transformation of the one-man gang, and you said one of the greatest of all time here, talking about the African Dream. He's not quite the Dream yet. They haven't dubbed him the nickname yet, but he is Akeem, and the Slickster here explaining, and I love this, he says that he and Akeem are brothers, one and the same, John. It's just that Akeem is medium rare and the Slickster is well done. And I just love, only Slick could get away with something like that.
So good. What an awesome line. That just perfect. I love that he said they're brothers. that just cracked me up. When you think about it, though, it's like, what is this gimmick? What are they going for? Obviously, making fun of Dusty, but why is it Akeem? Like, why is he the African Dream? Like, it's such an interesting, weird gimmick, but I love the pairing with Slick. I don't know why. It just works perfectly. Love it. Yeah,
they work together. Hear the stories they both told, that they rode together, they traveled together because neither really did drugs or drank. They saved their money and they kind of hung out together. And so you could kind of see that chemistry there. For as ludicrous on paper, when you tell somebody what this Akeem gimmick is, a giant Easter egg dancing his way to the ring or whatever it may be. I loved Akeem, and I've told this story. Everybody else is like sick of hearing this, but when I got rid of all my Hasbros 20 plus years ago, I kept my Akeem figure, and it sat on my desk for nearly 20 years. And then I gave it to the kids one day, and by the time I saw it again, it wasn't in beautiful shape anymore. So I said, you guys just keep him. But yeah, for like 20 years, he sat on my desk next to me. And I told him that story back in April of this year. I went down to the GrappleCon in Orlando, and I told him that story, and he said, man, that's cool. Kind of fucked up, but that's cool. So that was, he could see the humor in the story I was trying to tell him. He's like, that's kind of messed up, a little bit weird. But I'm a wrestling fan at the end of the day, and I can't explain why.
I love him and Boss-man together, like perfect pairing.
Oh, yeah.
Twin Towers. Unbelievable.
Which is odd, too, because you stick a former prison guard next to Akeem, and somehow that's a tag team. And it worked somehow, right?
Yeah.
It just worked. Yeah. So we go talking about tag teams. Great segue there. Thank you, John. The Rockers coming out. Shawn Michaels and Marty Jannetty taking on Rusty Riddle and Sandy Beach. And what a team name there. Rusty Riddle and Sandy Beach. You just talked to Sandy recently on one of your podcasts.
Yeah, I just had him on. Sandy Beach, a.k.a. Rick Allen. Yes, great guest. Good stuff. Love that he was kind of integral in No Holds Barred a little bit. He's behind the scenes doing a lot of stuff for No Holds Barred, the movie. So love that he's there and kind of making more money than you would think for, an enhancement guy, but maybe not even considered an enhancement guy, although obviously did a lot of jobs.
Yeah, and they would use him on the house shows here for a little bit. They started doing away with some, like Terry Gibbs and some of those guys have just left, and they're being replaced by guys like Sandy Beach. They're trying out that next wave of guys and seeing what he had, because he had a look to him, a different look than most of what you would just call an enhancement type guy.
Yep.
It was
bigger.
a little more to him than, yes.
Way bigger.
Definitely, yeah, for sure. So we got the Rockers in the ring taking on Riddle and Beach. We get an insert promo from the Rockers as well, who remind us they are, in fact, tag team specialists. Woo! Double drop kicks everywhere. Going to open this one up. The Rockers clearing the ring early. Sandy Beach returning only to eat a double super kick. And it's back out to the floor. So Rusty Riddle going to tag in, but it's more double teaming. Shawn coming off of that top rope fist drop. And then Michaels going to scoop Riddle up in a seated position on his shoulders. Wait a minute. No, wait. Jannetty off the top? Kind of a clothesline crossbody type deal? Doomsday device, I guess you could say, by the Rockers. Hadn't seen that one before. They're going to pick up the win here, 326.
Good stuff here from the Rockers. Pretty kind of what you would expect, which I just love seeing the athleticism. And at this point in time, you're not seeing a lot of tag teams that could be that athletic and do those type of moves that the Rockers can pull off.
Definitely innovative, back in their era. And of course, they had time to build this up. They came in for a cup of coffee, like a weekend here back in 87. That didn't do too well. We covered that long ago here on the Grenade, but they're back. They're given a second opportunity. Thank God for it, and basically the Young Stallions were put together. Well, they were put together, and then they really weren't, because they were going to use the Rockers in 87. And then the Rockers get fired right away, and they put the Young Stallions back together. But let's face it, they were never going to be the Rockers.
Right. No, definitely not. Jannetty and Michaels, far superior. Even though I love Roma and Powers, and I think they're both good, just Jannetty and Michaels are superior workers to a lot of guys. They're probably superior workers to even to like the Rock and Roll Express, who they're kind of emulating as well. Just two of the all-time greats to me. I feel like Jannetty, obviously some personal issues, he could have been more, could have been better.
Yes.
And hey, if they didn't eat glass with Jimmy Jack Funk, maybe they would have not been fired. Crazy guy.
Marty, man, Party Marty was my favorite rocker when they were the Rockers.
Yes,
once they started doing the Shawn Michaels slow build to the heel turn, I kind of leaned that way. It was like that Mr. Perfect arrogance, and Mr. Perfect was by far my favorite heel during that era. So Shawn kind of replaced him for me in certain ways. So as Shawn was turning, I go, you know what? I kind of like Shawn better now, but throughout the Rockers run, I was the Marty guy. I was always the Marty. So whenever you used to hear or still hear, because I don't even know if they know what they're talking about when they say it now, but you're the Marty Jannetty of the tag team. That's a hell of a compliment if you're just talking about the tag team, right?
Yeah,
now what happened afterwards,
definitely.
obviously, Marty was, sealed his own fate. Think about how many times he got fired in the middle of the pushes. Right?
Broke the record. Yeah. He got fired like 7 or 8 times, just nuts. And I always said, and I even interviewed a bunch of wrestlers that obviously have worked with the Rockers. They were saying Jannetty is every bit as good as Michaels was in the ring. And I totally agree. It's just that maybe the promos or maybe a little bit of the charisma, you got to give it to Michaels. But still, in ring, I don't know. I might go Jannetty. Jannetty was awesome.
Yeah, I think that's why I favored Jannetty in the match. He always seemed to move a little faster, stay on top of things. Shawn was great at delivering the moves too, don't get me wrong. But it was just Marty seemed to, or it was like came natural to him what he was going to do next. And it just, I don't know. I felt like he was the captain of the team or something.
Yeah.
When I was,
definitely. Yep.
Well, here we go. This is going to be a fun one. It's Bad News Brown from Harlem, New York, heading out to the ring to take on poor Warren Bianchi. And it's your typical bad news attack before the bell. When will these job guys ever learn? Just don't turn your back on Bad News Brown, who just obliterates Bianchi here. That left arm clothesline where it's not really a Stan Hansen lariat, but he throws it right through you. And that's going to set things up for the Ghetto Blaster to give Bad News the win, 208. And then the fun part of the match actually happens post-match, really. It's, we see a ringside fan dressed up in Macho Madness type gear here, sunglasses and a hat, promoting the Macho Man, talking trash to one Bad News Brown. And Brown going to scoop the fan up, snatch him up by his shirt, takes the hat and glasses off, stomps him on the ground, shouting my favorite term, garbage, which is what he would call the job guys as he put his foot on him. But Brown making it clear now, I would have to say, that he's coming for the Macho Man. More specifically, he's coming for that WWF title.
Love Bad News Brown. I loved him then. For some reason, the way they booked him, if it was like put into the 90s, he's like Stone Cold Steve Austin. He's beating up people. He's beating up Jack Tunney. He says whatever he wants. He can't team with anybody because they can't trust him. But then he doesn't lose either when he teams because he just walks out of the team and they lose. Yeah. He doesn't lose. Yeah. He only really loses on TV to basically Macho Man and Hogan. And I think Jake maybe once, but it's like basically loses to Mega Powers, the two biggest guys. That's all he loses to on TV. He was booked like nobody else, if you think about it. I mean, He was booked unbelievably. I love Bad News Brown. Such a cool gimmick. Just Dude, he was awesome. I loved him. I know, obviously, in WWF at this point, he's starting to lose mobility, and obviously he's been wrestling quite a while, and he had some injuries, but he was awesome.
Gimmick's great, 100%. Yeah. I mean, he sold it. As a kid, he was one of the few I was afraid of. Earthquake, I looked at as a larger-than-life character on my TV screen. I guess even at that age, 9 and 10, that I took it literal when he was crushing Hogan, and I was like, oh my God, he did that. But I didn't fear him the level I feared Bad News, who came off as a real human to me. And so I was like, man, I wouldn't want to go near this guy. This guy scares me. Not scary. He doesn't scare me like Abdullah the Butcher scares me. He scares me like a normal person would. Like this guy's just intimidating. Great catchphrases too, right?
Oh, so good. He was, I don't know, he's ahead of his time for sure. But I always was like, how are you going to beat this guy? Because he just cheats all the time. So you have to cheat, and which Hogan and Savage did. You have to cheat back to beat him. So I was like, this is so interesting with this guy. It's like, he's so hard to beat because he's just going to out-cheat you unless you out-cheat him.
And he would sell that, the Harlem street thug in him or whatever you want to call it. He's, he's not going to fight fair. He's going to come out there. He wants the belt. Savage is hiding behind the skirt, which we're going to hear very soon here on the program.
Yes.
It's gonna get fun. It's just starting right now. Bad News coming after Savage. I believe at this point, I could be wrong. I know as soon as Hogan came back, he made sure he got the one pinfall over Bad News. I think it was in Boston.
But he cheated
with the fist helmet. He certainly did. So at this point, he may be the once defeated Bad News Brown. I can't recall where we're at here in October if he's taken another loss. But again, they're few and far between. They certainly protect him all the way really to the end till he quits after SummerSlam 90.
The war bonnet, if you will.
The war, yeah, absolutely.
The Hogan war bonnet, yeah.
I think we're already past that. It seemed to last about a month.
Yeah. And that other awesome thing. Remember he had the chain with the
license plate.
Yes. Oh, God.
Did you know there was a third piece to this ensemble, which he only used in promos? We didn't bring it to the ring, and I didn't realize it until, and it's actually one of the promo picks as well, so you'll see it immediately if you do that. But there is a gas tank from a Harley Davidson with like Hulk Hogan kind of painted on it, or Hulkamaniac, whatever it says. God. And he has an antenna for a straw, and he drinks his whatever the hell he drinks. We're not going to get into that here, but he drinks something out of it. It gives him these powers and things, and he cut a promo with it, which we covered here on the show as well. And that was new to me. It was like, okay, I never paid attention to that before.
Yeah, that's awesome. Okay, interesting. Interesting. Hulkster, what are you doing? Yep.
Well, we're going to go back to Sean Mooney again right now, guys. Back to the event center. We're going to hear from the likes of Brutus the Barber Beefcake, as well as King Haku, his manager, Bobby Heenan.
We are back at the World Wrestling Federation Event Center. Brutus the Barber Beefcake, his opportunity to become the next Intercontinental Champion at SummerSlam 88, taken away by the Outlaw, Ron Bass. All his aggression is centered on this man, and right now, Brutus the Barber Beefcake is standing by with comments.
You know something, Big Outlaw Ron Bass? You have got my attention big time, son. You know what you did to me with those spurs? You tried to put me out of wrestling. You tried to rip the flesh from my body, pull the skin right off of my head. Yeah, you wanted to see me down, and you wanted to see me out. But you didn't get the job done. So now, next time it's going to be a lot different, Ron Bass. Because just because you're big and just because you're ugly, that doesn't scare me at all. I'm used to it. I'm used to getting the job done. And when I come to do a job, pal, only I know how to do it right. The barber style, pal. So remember, the Clippers and me and you.
Brutus the Barber Beefcake guaranteed he will run into the Outlaw, Ron Bass, somewhere out there in the World Wrestling Federation. Also, King Haku, he's out there as well, and he is determined to make all of his opponents subject to his rule. He's standing by right now with Bobby Heenan.
Randy Savage, Elizabeth Warrior, or fight Bobby Heenan.
You see, what I'm doing here is I'm showing proper respect for the King of the World Wrestling Federation. You tough guy, macho man, Randy Savage, a World Wrestling Federation champion and the First Lady of Wrestling. You better get used to showing proper respect. And the Ultimate Warrior that can leave the dressing room and get to the ring in 3 seconds. You better start showing some respect because we've got our eyes on your championships. And Hulk Hogan, we haven't forgot about you. I want all 3 of you to learn this one little verse, which will make me very happy. Long live the king, get it? Long live the king!
Well, I'm not quite sure what King Haku, or for that matter, Bobby the Brain Heenan, said right there, but I think the point is, King Haku will take on anyone here in the World Wrestling Federation, and he is definitely a superstar to keep your eye on here in the WWF. We've got more action coming your way. Stay tuned.
King Haku aiming high. I don't speak Tonganese or whatever that was, John, but I could understand the names he was calling out, and that included Hulk Hogan, the Macho Man Randy Savage, and even the Ultimate Warrior. I wrote here in my notes, career goals.
Pretty good stuff. I always liked Haku, not really as far as like being a fan like it, but I always like thought this guy is good. He's with Heenan. He's, you know, eventually he's with Andre. They're tag team champions. I always liked him. I always thought he was good. Like, oh my God, he's lasting to the end with Hogan and Savage and Survivor Series. Like, they're always didn't like give him the push to the moon, but he never got like jobbed out completely either. He always was booked really well. I always liked him. But for some reason, I got to go back to Beefcake. I don't know why. Never was a huge Beefcake guy. I don't know why. Even though he's Hogan's boy, I just wasn't. Like he was good in a certain role. I just didn't see him as a main event guy.
Well, you should ask Beefcake. He was the 1B to Hogan's 1A, according to his 1989 timeline on kayfabe commentary.
Oh my God, that's right. That's right.
Oh, yeah. My brother died laughing after he watched that, and he called me and he goes, "Is he that delusional?" Because he said that like it was real. I said, "I truly believe he believed that." Yeah, absolutely. You should hear the stories, you know, but, yeah, he's, such a top talent that they have stuck him in here with Outlaw Ron Bass. How do you think that pitch went down? And I don't know that the barber had much of a say in it, but could you imagine going for the belt, Honky's belt? And supposedly, according to Beefcake, he was promised he was getting it. And it seemed like it had to go that way. I don't know how else you could, had he worked SummerSlam and not won that belt, I don't know what you could have done with Beefcake, because their feud, him and Honky, actually started before WrestleMania. So they had been going on for a half a year at that point. And then at the very last moment, the weekend of the pay-per-view, they write him out with the Outlaw attack. And now we've got this feud between Ron Bass, who hadn't even really been on syndicated TV for all of 1987, and really until WrestleMania 4 in 1988, maybe a couple of times. Only usually just on the primetime show and things like the house show matches and things. And now he's worked into a feud with the Dog, initially after WrestleMania, and now he's just upgraded to the Barber out of the blue. What was your take on that?
I feel like the Brutus the Barber Bass feud, I like it just as far as like when you're looking at it, it's like, okay, you need other feuds on TV. It's a good mid-card feud, but if you look at it in totality, it just goes on way too long. It feels like they feuded forever. I don't know what was going on there.
I didn't realize it until, you know, as a kid, I couldn't remember, you know, the feud going on. I remember everybody remembers the blade job deal. It was part of the SummerSlam Coliseum video, even if you didn't get the pay-per-view. So,
yep.
That was very unusual for the time. Somebody using a spur to rip your skull open, right? So that definitely stuck in my mind. But really, the Outlaw, he was getting pushed that hard. I don't remember that. But didn't you think about how far away that Saturday night's main event is that they have, you know? And I'm sure everybody knows what's going to happen, but I won't go into it here. But think about how many months apart all of that transpires. Like, what the hell did they do to keep that running for this long? And right now, the answer is nothing. But they do, you know, I'm lying, John. They do one thing that we've covered here so far, looking at the house shows in the fall. And it's actually pretty smart if you're bringing the match back or wanting to keep it prolonged for the fans out there that are attending the house shows, is Beefcake's pinning Bass every night, but it's not by definitive fashion. It's usually catching him off guard with a running cross body block off the ropes, but a Bass immediately every night attacking the Barber with Miss Betsy, choking him out till he's unconscious, going for his spur, and as he goes to cut him again, here come the baby faces to run Bass off. So they're keeping it hot. They're keeping Bass over, if you will, as the heel. So I'm assuming maybe they'll bring the matches back again. I don't know what their intentions are. We haven't gotten there yet on the house shows, but right now that's what they're doing with it. So at least they're actually trying to make this make sense. There's more to this than I remembered as a child.
They do have the feud for a while, but there is like you said, there's spice to it. They do kind of keep it running. He's getting heat, and he's really, you know, teasing some stuff. And obviously, when the haircut comes and everything, I mean, it's going to be a long feud, but not a terrible one.
No, it's been a lot better than I remembered, because, you know, until I got to this, because I have not watched the Bass feud in forever, I forgot that it was Beefcake who initiated the feud. He's following in your buddy Hogan's footsteps. You know, all those turns, those were Hulk's fault, and all those heel turns. But, you know, Beefcake came out first. You know, Beefcake, it's okay for him to put people to sleep and cut their hair. But when the Outlaw gets a win and wants to choke somebody out with Miss Betsy, apparently that wasn't okay. And the Barber comes out and cuts up Miss Betsy and cuts up his cowboy hat. And so the Outlaw was just coming back for revenge, really, at the end of the day.
Yep. Eye for an eye. I totally agree.
Yeah.
Hey everybody, Gene Jackson here, inviting you to check out the Retro Wrestling Review, where each week I'm joined by some great co-hosts who help me review classic episodes of USWA Championship Wrestling, and right now we are doing week-by-week reviews of 1993. But we don't just do reviews, sometimes we get a chance to interview some of the people who were there and lived it, plus do watch-alongs. It's a lot of fun, so check out new episodes that drop every Wednesday at WrestleCopia.com. And to find links to everything associated to the podcast, you can go to USWApodcast.com.
Hey guys, Ray Russell here, curator of the WrestleCopia Podcast Network, inviting you guys to listen to many of the programs here as part of the WrestleCopia brand, including, but not limited to, the Wrestling Memory Grenade, currently covering the 1988 and the WWF Project. You can also listen to the Regional Wrestling Podcast, where we talk the territories. You can also listen to the Wrestling Stoop with the legend himself, Bob Roop. Bob goes back in time each and every week, covering not just his career, but countless stories and interactions with hundreds of wrestling names spanning his 2 decades in the business. But that's not all. You can also check out the Pro Wrestling Academy with the professor of Pro Resu, Mr. Dan Ginnity. Dan and I go back in time and cover the history of Japanese professional wrestling in the English language. And you can listen to all of those shows and more, all part of the WrestleCopia Podcast Network, located over at WrestleCopia.com. That's WrestleCopia.com, and anywhere your podcast streaming needs are met. And while you're at it, why not subscribe to our social media guys for all the latest goings on here at the WrestleCopia Podcast Network. Plus, I'm constantly adding old school video clips and pictures from throughout wrestling history. You can follow us over on X, formerly Twitter, at Wrestling Grenade. That's at RASSLIN Grenade. Also, follow and like me, Facebook.com/Wrestling Grenade. And why not subscribe to YouTube.com/Wrestling Grenade. And of course, now would be a fantastic time to become a WrestleCopia patron over at Patreon.com/WrestleCopia. That address again, Patreon.com/WrestleCopia, where you get so many gifts, including all of my insanely detailed show notes for every episode of The Grenade Show, Regional Wrestling, and the Monday Warfare podcast. You'll also get early access to a lot of the podcasts here on the WrestleCopia brand, where you can listen days and sometimes as much as a week earlier than the rest of the listeners. But that's still not all, guys. You also get at least a dozen digital downloads for your viewing and reading pleasure each and every month, plus random bonus video drops, and of course, the Patreon exclusive Watch Along series covering many past WWF and WCW events. And if that's not all, videocasts, also now a part of Patreon. No subscription, cancel anytime. Give it a try for a month, guys. I think you'll like the content that I offer, and every penny of it goes right back here into paying the bills. So if you're looking to support that next up-and-coming podcast brand, please consider making it WrestleCopia. Help me pay some of the bills to keep the WrestleCopia Podcast Network and all of the great shows here up and running for the months and the years to come.
Hey, Bruiser buddies, I want you to listen to Wrestling Nostalgia with Dave Dynasty. Every week, he has the roughest and toughest interviews in the podcast world today, with the best guests you could ask for. There's no bums on this show. Let Dave Dynasty be your podcasting tag team partner and listen to Wrestling Nostalgia while drinking beer, smoking cigars, and busting heads. Just look it up on your favorite podcast platform and subscribe today, because the Bruiser said so.
Also on this episode of Superstars, somewhere around here, we get a bumper promoting the second annual. It is now annual, guys, because there's 2 of them, talking about the Survivor Series returning to the Richfield Coliseum Thanksgiving night. And I can't wait, because right here, October, November, and specifically the Survivor Series, with all of the Akeems and the Brainbusters and all these guys starting to work their way in, and the Pateras and the Muracos working their way out. This is right here where it really gets good for me, like where it just pops for the next 2.5 years straight.
It is an amazing roster, and I love that Survivor Series. People that I know always question why I love the Survivor Series. I don't know why. That's my favorite Survivor Series every year. an annual thing. And during Christmas, you got to watch Home Alone and Die Hard, right? I mean, so when it's Survivor Series time, you got to go back and you watch Survivor Series. I always watch 88, 89, 90. And if I have time for others, I'll watch it. But 88 is always first. So we got to do 88. I have to watch the Survivor Series. And I love that tag match with the 10 team elimination. That's unbelievable. Love the double turn. And I love the main event. I that's my favorite team ever. That Mega Powers team. It's perfect because you have two awesome main eventers. You have the upper mid card guy. You have the other mid card guy, and you kind of have the low mid card guy. It's like the perfect team. When you look at it, it's like, okay, Koko can get eliminated easily. Then Hillbilly might be some, Hercules might have to cheat. Hogan and Savage to win. I love it. I love 88.
Well, I'll tell you what, we're not there yet, but I love the finish, all of the convoluted nonsense that they put, and I'm not saying that in a negative way. I just don't know what other words I'm looking for there, but just everything they do in that entire finish with the Mega Powers, the Twin Towers, Haku, just everything they do there.
The handcuffs, perfect.
It took some effort to really put that all together. It wasn't just like a normal finish, right? So I thought they did an excellent job, but I'm agreeing with you. Whoever was in charge of the Coliseum video at that time, God bless them for not editing anything out of that 20-man tag, but also on top of that, putting it first, because it was not actually the first match on the pay-per-view. They flip-flopped the matches, and to put that first man to kick off with Demolition and looking at that team across the board, the Brainbusters on down, and then you look over on the other side, it's Powers of Pain, Hart Foundation, the Rockers, the Bull. It's like, wow, what an amazing match that was. And I can't wait to get there. Like, I just literally, like a mark, I just had a goosebump go up the back of my neck.
Right.
Like, just thinking about that match. I'm looking forward to getting there. But I'll tell you who will not make the Survivor Series, though he is factored in at this point, and that is The Rock. Don Muraco taking on Larry Stevens. And we get an insert promo here from Greg Valentine and Jimmy Hart, the Hammer, talking about his figure 4, which he now calls the Heartbreaker. Interesting. Greg declaring war on The Rock. Well, that's good. We're only like 5 months into their feud, so might as well be war. But and in reality, that won't last too long. We'll get to that in just a second. Muraco out here to Jesus Christ Superstar. Inherited that from Billy Graham. And he's out here taking off that purple tie-dye shirt to reveal, my God, look at those hoses. As Hulk Hogan would say, the veins throughout the chest of Don Muraco, who makes an easy win here. Tombstone pile driver, going to score the win, 1 minute, 34 seconds. Don Muraco during this era, your take?
I don't know. I love Don Muraco. I thought he was great. I feel like more of a heel, though. I know the great theme song. I know what they were trying to go for. I just feel like at this point, much better off as a heel than a babyface. Not that I minded him as much as a babyface. I just was like, man, he's Don the Rock Muraco, like the Magnificent One. To me, he's a heel. Yeah. I just feel like maybe miscast a little bit. Even with Superstar Billy Graham, as a babyface, I don't know if it works.
Well, to Don, he was a heel. He didn't want to be a babyface, but he, covering this week to week, there's a lot of people can sit there and go, he should have never been a face. And people, if I'm just thinking like a random fan, yeah, he should have been a heel. But watching 87 and watching him basically exhaust every bit of overness he could possibly have in that Orton tag team, and he was just done. Like, not necessarily physically done, but as far as a character, he was done. You could have done anything. You could have gave him wings. You could have put horns on his head. You could have done any kind of weird nonsense you wanted to with him. The crowd wasn't going to react. They wouldn't have cared. So the only thing, and I'm not saying this happened, I wasn't there, but I feel like at that point they went to Don and said, all right, you got two options here. We can turn you babyface, see what we can do with that, or you can go with Bobby, and all of a sudden he was babyface and Orton's gone. Muraco sticks around. Then he immediately realizes I got to do something and gets into, I guess you could call that shape. It's some kind of shape anyway.
Yeah,
right? And,
that's another thing. Not in great physical condition there towards the end of 88 here.
But if you watch his pay-per-view matches or his big matches, he comes out and he brings it. He tries Survivor Series 87. He was doing Ricky Morton rolls across the ring, and he's throwing drop kicks. WrestleMania 4, that match with Dino Bravo, which I just groaned every time it came on when I was growing up, and it may have been the first match that was Jake and Rude. I fast forward. Oh man, that match is not too good. May have been the first
crazy.
Time.
Yes, not good, but it's crazy. It's those two not having a good one. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that was the first time I learned how to use a fast forward button on my VCR. Before that, I didn't think you could fast forward a wrestling match, but
yeah.
Anywho, but even then, when I went back and covered that WrestleMania 4 here on the Grenade, I was like, you know what? That Muraco Bravo match, it really wasn't that bad. So Muraco would bring it when he could, but you're right. By the fall here, he's losing a little gas, and he and the dog are on their way out, and we'll talk a little bit more about that in a minute. So they've been building this feud throughout the summer. Now we're in the fall. They clearly have nothing for Valentine or Muraco, so they're letting them continue to cut promos on one another. I don't know how over it was to begin with, that feud, but I mean, we're like in month 4 or 5 of that right now. I didn't even realize it was still going on. They basically abandoned it outside of the house shows. On TV, it was abandoned, I thought, weeks ago. So nevertheless, Muraco's pretty much on his way out. They're going to have to find Valentine something else to do here very shortly, and they will, and he'll be doing that for like a year. So
yeah.
Oh, man. It's that time of the program, guys. It's the debut of the Brother Love show on Superstars. Brother Love has just left Wrestling Challenge, and he's making his debut over here on the A Show, pal. And his very first guest, who else would you want for your first show, John, than Bobby the Brain Heenan? Bobby going to announce right now, guys. We're going to take it off to a quick soundbite I put together from this Brother Love show. Bobby Heenan announcing his latest charge, Terry Taylor.
Speaking of brains, my guest this week, please welcome my dear, close, personal friend, Brother Brain, Bobby Heenan.
You know, I am just full of love. It's just bubbling out of me right now because you see there's been some changes in the Bobby Heenan family. I'm going to increase the size of the Bobby Heenan family. What I am going to do in the weeks and months to come is add new members, and do the most I can to spread love.
Oh, my.
And at this particular point, I am going to bring out a gentleman. Now, this gentleman is the newest member of the Bobby Heenan family. Now, he's limited when it comes to wrestling. He's limited when it comes to size. He's limited with a won-and-lost record. But I'm going to make this man the next big superstar in the world of professional wrestling. And if the gentleman could come out right now, his name is Mr. Terry Taylor.
Terry Taylor.
Thank you, Brother Love. It's a pleasure to be here.
Now, as you can see, the man is limited when it comes to size.
I'm not too small. I'm all right. About the right size.
But you're not big like Andre the Giant.
That's true. That's true.
And he's limited when it comes to being muscular.
Well, I'm pretty muscular, 240 pounds.
But you're not cut up and you're not that strong as ravishing Rick Rude.
That's true. No.
And you don't possess the ability in the ring with martial arts as the great King Haku.
That's true, but I'm a pretty good wrestler on my own.
But you're going to become better. And I don't know how much pain you can endure, what your threshold is, which is limited. I mean, your won and loss record isn't that great.
Well, I haven't lost them all.
But you haven't won them all.
That's true, Brain. That's true.
And I am going to take you to the top of this great sport of professional wrestling. Because you see, as limited as you are, by being short, by being not that muscular, by not having a great gift at this sport of wrestling, there is one thing though, one added factor, one ingredient that will make you a superstar, that will make you a great star, and that is me, Bobby the Brain Heenan. So I suggest you follow me, young man. Follow me to stardom.
Now just how much love can one man have? Look at Brother Brain continuing to spread his love.
All right, John. So Bobby talks the current changes going on in the Heenan family, what members may be headed in. Heenan then builds up, I guess you could say, I'll put quotations around building up, his latest acquisition, who may be limited in talent. He may be limited in his wrestling abilities. He might even be limited in size. And maybe he doesn't even have the greatest win-loss record, says the Brain. But with Bobby as his manager, this man will be the next superstar here in the WWF. Please welcome out Terry Taylor. Comes out to the Brother Love show, and immediately Bobby begins to point out the faults to Taylor. You're not big like Andre the Giant. You're not muscular like Rick Rude. You don't have martial arts skills or the aggression of a King Haku, even pointing out that his record isn't the best. But there is one thing Taylor has that will take him to the top, and that's the brains of Bobby Heenan. Bobby going to make Terry Taylor a star.
This was because I don't remember this promo being like that. Like, I was like, I know obviously he's a heel and then Heenan's going to be his manager to start, but I don't remember him basically like ripping him apart.
Yeah.
And I don't know if that was a rib on Terry Taylor. I'm not sure if that, like, what the end game was as far as that. It just seems like, okay, maybe he's going to be turning babyface, which eventually he does. And obviously he does feud with Heenan and Brooklyn Brawler. But it's one of those things where it's like, did they start that initially? Because it almost seems like you're burying a guy on a rib right off the start.
Most peculiar way to use Terry Taylor. I mean, right out of the gate. This is Terry's, maybe his second appearance on a syndicated show. See, when things happen on primetime, I've explained it to the listeners time and time again. If it happens on primetime, that doesn't necessarily mean it's happened, right? It's like it's here, we aired it, it's on USA, but until something happens on syndicated TV, it didn't really happen. And clearly already planting seeds, I would hope, for a babyface turn. Either that or, like you said, they just hated Terry Taylor enough. They were gunning for a long-term burial right out of the gate because Terry, he hadn't made many TV matches at this point, but he hadn't lost any. The ones that he has appeared in, he's won with the Scorpion Deathlock usually. So for Bobby to come out and say, you don't have a great win-loss record was kind of interesting right out of the gate because he had never lost on TV up to this point. And he definitely needed that WWF shine, though, because Terry wasn't the biggest guy. So to stick him with Bobby Heenan, that worked for me. But at the same time, what's Terry's gimmick? He's cocky and he's good looking. Well, then there's Rick Rude, who is also cocky and good looking in a different way. But, Terry Taylor definitely isn't a Rick Rude, right? So Bobby had that right. And I was a Taylor fan. I was huge, unfortunately you got the Terrence Taylor shtick and the Taylor-made man but I lived through all of that because I just wanted to watch him work. Because Terry just was a great worker in the ring. I still remember to this day watching Starrcade 91, how unimportant that Lethal Lottery was, but he hit Lex Luger, who was the champion, with a pile driver at one point, and I just marked out because Terry Taylor hit Lex Luger with the pile driver. So I was always a huge Taylor fan, and the Rooster thing, I was a kid. I can't say I latched onto it because he was a Rooster. In fact, I didn't question why Akeem was Akeem, but I questioned why he was called the Red Rooster. So, that stuck out to me as a 9-year-old, right? So I was like, what the hell? He crows, right? He fucking crows as a babyface. Yeah.
So weird. I still don't get it. That's got to be also some sort of rib. Like, he's the cock of the walk, pal. Get it, Red Rooster? Like, just got to be another rib on him. So weird.
Poultry in motion, right?
Yes.
You've had so many people on your shows, the two-man Power Trip podcast, and I don't know if you've ever talked to Terry, but I don't know if you've heard the story where he claims that he called the offices, specifically Pat Patterson, for like a year straight, at least since Starrcade 87-ish time frame, where they were basically jobbed him to Nikita there. The writing was on the wall, and he was persistent. He called every week, according to him, up until they gave him the job here in the latter half of the summer of 88. And he thinks that he got the Rooster gimmick as kind of a punishment because of his nuisance to Pat. And it was like, okay, you want a job? Okay, you're the Red Rooster.
Wow, did not know that. Never had Terry on, but I've talked to him a few times just off air about a few different things, but never on air. I always wanted to get him. He's one of the guys I'm like, man, I would love to do like a long form interview with him. And he didn't talk about this, but that is interesting because I think he knows that it was a rib. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know if everybody else knows, but I think he knows it was. Or at least
I don't know what else people call the polka dots thing a rib on Dusty. This is more of a rib to me than because Dusty's going to get it over anyway, right? So
but he's still Dusty Rhodes. He's not being called Polka Dot Man,
right? Polka Dot, right? They could have called Sapphire Polka Dotty. That would have been money, right? So we go back to the ring to see the Junkyard Dog taking on Brian Costello, who steps up to JYD here, but the Dog ready to go, using his entire arsenal of maneuvers: headbutt, crawling headbutt, clothesline, and the thump, the power slam, giving the Dog the win. 127, and much like Don Muraco, this is also it for the Dog on syndicated TV. Both of them finishing up this week. They both have a primetime matchup coming from Paris. But other than that, for all intents and purposes, grabbed him cakes one final time. JYD essentially done with the company.
Crazy. You know what I mean? Just he was so over. I know he was getting a little out of shape at this point, and maybe he wasn't a great worker that he was in Mid-South, but he was over like Rover, the mainstream guy. Like everybody knew who he was. Crazy. Obviously, you know, one of the guys that they really kind of built the WWF on.
Yeah. Well, I used to tell the story that was my favorite LJN babyface. You know, that was my go-to. It wasn't Hogan, sorry, John, but it was usually Dog back in the 85 time. Even the thumb wrestlers, I'd grab Dog. There you go. But JYD gone, and of course he has become very, as Gorilla would call it, lethargic by this point in his career, and certainly, you know, a little larger than he used to be. And I could see why, you know, he was gone in 87. They canned him after WrestleMania 3 for missing a ton of shows in the early part of 87, reportedly due to drug habits. And they bring him back when Duggan gets fired. They needed somebody to fill those spots, so the Dog gets another shot here in the company, another live, if you will, and life, and he's back for another year or so, and now it looks like he's going to be gone again after this European tour, not because of, supposedly not because of, you know, just because of cost-cutting measures, but rather due to things that will happen over there with he and Muraco. But we'll get to that later on. Right now, we're going to go off to a Mr. Perfect vignette. He's finally here, and I'm so happy for it. This is vignette number 3, playing darts. Here he is, Curt Hennig, a.k.a. Mr. Perfect.
Just another example of why they call me Mr. Perfect. Absolutely perfect.
All right, so Mr. Perfect, Curt Hennig at this point, bullseye on the first try. We'll call it the first try anyway. Absolutely perfect, John. What did you make of Mr. Perfect?
Love Perfect, one of the all-time greats. What a awesome gimmick. It's just one of those things where you're like, what is this guy all about? And it's like, he literally can do everything perfectly, every sport. Like, wow, that's like perfectly defined, you know, for a pun there. Just, it was a great gimmick and just, to me, hilarious. It's like, okay, he throws a football, throws it to himself. The darts, it's like, okay, he's going to throw darts, he's going to nail the dart. Like, perfect on the bullseye. Just great stuff. And he nailed it. He's just, he's one of those guys that probably maybe could have been WWF champion, maybe should have been WWF champion, but one of the glue guys, one of the guys that was there for a long time that you consider when you think about the Hogan era. You think like, man, he was just the epitome of WWF at that point.
He was one of the handful of guys that people would reference when they would talk about the product of that time frame. People would reference the guy, even if they didn't know names, it would be like, you know, the preacher guy talking about Brother Love, or the guy with the snake, Jake the Snake, or the cop, you know, the big boss man. And but they would remember the guy that was Mr. Perfect whenever they would reference that. Well, yeah. And I don't know exactly when my fandom took over. It had to be after he got the cool neon singlets, you know, enhanced it for me as a kid. But somewhere there in 1989, he became like my favorite heel from then until, you know, he retired after working Brett. And then I wasn't so much a fan when he was in that managerial role, but he was my favorite heel for the next couple of years. We haven't gotten there yet, but he's slowly working on me by this point already. This guy's pretty damn cool.
Yeah, he's awesome. We'll see. This guy is great, yeah.
So we go on. There's a WWF Magazine ad talking about the Ultimate Warrior now on the cover, still promoting the now retired George the Animal Steele and Mine. Of course, Christmas around the corner, going to sell the Mine dolls, even though George Steele was forced to retire. And the Ultimate Warrior on the cover of the magazine. So that means you made it, right, when they give you a magazine cover.
Big time. And I never liked the Mine dolls. I don't know why that kind of like creeped me out. I don't know why.
A little bit.
Just never got into it. But hey, Warriors get the big push. You're starting to really, Vince is like, you know, basically, let's see what we got here, pal. You know, let's really, you know, put the machine behind them.
I really like this guy, pal. Let's do it. Yeah. So we'll see that as time goes on for sure. Right now we go back to one of my favorite tag teams of the era, Axe and Smash, the tag team champions, Demolition out here, along with Mr. Fuji, taking on Tommy Angel and DJ Peterson. Now, Peterson's been here for some of the summer into the fall here, getting some house show work. Again, one of those guys that's kind of replaced the old guard enhancement talent here, and they're kind of seeing what he has. Tommy Angel, one of many that we've talked about, Gene Ligon, and we're going to see more of them pop up. Lots of Crockett Country talent have been working the last several months of house shows here for Vince, and we were talking off air a little bit about that. And I don't know if that was sort of a Crockett deal where they were like, all right, we've been using you guys forever. You know, it's time to mix things up here. Maybe we're going to use a different slew of guys for a little bit, and you guys go find something else to do. And all these guys went and said, we got no work. And so now they're kind of working here for the W, because this has been going on for a few months now. The same troop of, I call them the Crockett talent, but you know what I mean.
Yep. It is interesting. And like you said, I'd love to kind of find out why and where that came from and why that happened. I wonder if it has to do with like Tony Gurria or one of the agents backstage, not necessarily Gurria, meaning just like an agent backstage at that point is saying like, hey, I got to book this talent. Let's use these Crockett guys now. Like, I wonder like if there's something backstage to it.
Yeah, I don't know who was booking, the enhancement
no
talent
idea
at this point.
point.
Yeah, so it would be interesting to see. I know later on, Strongbow did it for a while. I know eventually they'll let the Italian Stallion do it. That's how some of the Hardy Boys, the underage Jeff Hardy, got in there and whatnot. But not sure who's in charge of that right here in '88. Tag team champions in the ring, the Demolition. But we also get an insert promo here from the British Bulldogs, who are studying the champions, noting all of their mistakes and planning to capitalize. More on that in a moment. As Axe and Smash take apart Peterson first, Angel going to tag in, and it's demolish and destroy. And the Demolition Decapitation going to put Angel away 2 minutes and 21 seconds. And if that wasn't enough, post-match, Axe going to toss Peterson out to the floor and then hit a second decapitation on poor Tommy Angel, even tossing down referee Jimmy Corderas in the process. Dave Hebner also getting tossed down as the British Bulldogs arrive out to make the save. Davey Boy going to dropkick Axe out to the floor, leading to impressing Dynamite high into the air for that diving headbutt, their patented finisher. They landed here on Smash, so the Bulldogs hitting their finisher on Demolition on TV, and the crowd goes absolutely nuts. Great angle I wrote here, John, but where was this 3 months ago? Because they've been working each other for about 90 days on the house shows before we get any of this on TV.
Really building up some heat big time for Demolition. This was actually really cool angles. Like, wow, doing something really hot here on Superstars, to get tremendous amount of heat on Demolition. Love Demolition. They were awesome. Love the Bulldogs. Cool feud. But yeah, you got to do something to heat it up a little bit and a little bit sooner.
Yeah, they've been working the house shows, I believe, since the beginning of July or somewhere in July, because they even work WrestleFest against each other, which was cool. That's the reason I rented the tape. Honestly, Hogan and Andre in a cage, cool. Yeah. Definitely a selling point, but Demolition and Bulldogs, just trying to envision those two teams across from each other. That's really that's it. This is what I'm renting tonight. That's what I remember that all the way back to my childhood.
Not Savage versus DiBiase, huh? There was Demolition and Bulldogs.
I think so. But it was everything overall, right? It was the whole card. Warrior and Heenan in the weasel suit. It was all, but I just remember trying to envision that, whoa, those two teams wrestled. I didn't remember that. And so to me, this was absolutely the best they have made the Bulldogs look on TV since their feud with the Islanders. So it's been months since they've done anything other than win some squash matches. But again, they're on their way out here shortly after the incident with the Rougeaus. We talked about that on the last episode of The Grenade. Or a couple episodes ago. And so the Bulldogs on their way out, but it's just peculiar that they finally do something in the ring on TV for this feud. And how do you bring it back for another, 3 months on the house shows after everybody's already seen it? And now, and Demolition going over every night by cheat, but they go over every night, pinfall. And so how do you bring it back again and give them less, of a finish? I mean, with DQ, count out, whatever they may do. It just seemed odd placement to do this now.
Very strange, especially as Demolition will eventually maybe go babyface. You know what I mean? Like, so it's interesting. You're really heating them up to have them turn.
Yeah. It's odd. It seems like a lot of things happen right around this time, and they change their minds. They develop a new plan moving forward, and we're going to see that over the next couple of weeks. It becomes kind of prominent in the storylines. You can kind of start sensing things that you weren't sensing before. You can kind of feel the shift, if you know what I'm talking about. And right now we're going to go off to one more event center, guys. Sean Mooney standing by with the likes of Danny Davis, still getting promo time here with Jimmy Hart. We're also going to hear from Hacksaw Jim Duggan.
Welcome back to the event center. Jimmy Mouth of the South Hart, head of the Hart Foundation. Now Jim the Anvil Neidhart and Bret the Hitman Hart no longer under his management, but he is still getting 25% of their take. Now the Fabulous Rougeaus brothers have joined the Hart Foundation, and there is one other guy in singles competition. Of course, Greg the Hammer Valentine, and one more. He is Dangerous Danny Davis.
Dangerous Danny Davis, everybody. What a great referee he was. What a great wrestler he is. We've got open contracts, so anybody wants to step in line and fight this man, bring it on down, baby.
That's right. A lot of people have taken me up on my offer, and a lot of people have gone down to defeat. Only because, as Jimmy said, I was the greatest referee of all time in the Wrestling Federation. And now I have defeated opponent after opponent after opponent by using the rules.
by knowledge of the rules. And Jimmy Hart has signed open contracts for me to wrestle anybody who wants to sign on the dotted line.
Like he said before, this man is undefeated in the World Wrestling Federation. So anybody wants to step up and get knocked down, bring it on down, baby.
Well, I'd say the dangerous Danny Davis has enough confidence for the entire Hart Foundation. Well, you talk about confidence, add to that guts and determination, and you come up with Hacksaw Jim Duggan, a real American. Let's hear from him. He's standing by right now.
Folks, you know me, Hacksaw Jim Duggan. I'm not going to come out here and talk about diamond rings and gold chains and limousines and jet airplanes. I'm going to come out here and talk about what's important to me, what's important to you, as that's the American flag, that's the USA. I'm one person that's sick and tired of people coming down here, looking down their noses at us, saying how we've got all the whole world mixed up. Well, Bravo, I'm tired of it. The people out there are tired of it. And Mr. 2x4 right here, he's tired of it too. So when you come on down to the ring, you won't have to look too far to find Hacksaw Jim Duggan. Just look over in the corner, and I'll be looking back at you, tough guy. Ho!
All right, so this Danny Davis, Jimmy Hart promo is a little odd for me because Jimmy Hart hasn't been with Danny since the end of August. Secondly, I'm pretty positive I heard this promo back in the summer. And so I feel like this is just kind of fodder to work in here to kill some time. So we'll just talk more about, you can talk about Danny too if you want, John, but Jim Duggan, of course, warning Dino Bravo. And obviously the feud is beginning there between those two. So Duggan, first time we've seen him here on the program this week. And Danny Davis and Jimmy Hart, anything you want to say about any of those guys?
I just wasn't thinking like, wow, they're going to do something with Danny Davis, because I know they're not going to do something with Danny Davis. So it's just kind of weird that they did that. I don't know if it's just a time filler or what.
Yeah, it was the only thing that caught me off guard in that interview, either one of them, was Duggan. It almost felt like he was feuding with Ric Flair because he's feuding with Dino Bravo, but he starts off the promo talking about he's not Fancy Dan. He doesn't do the diamond rings, the limousines, or the jet airplanes. It's about America, brother, and I don't know what that had to do with Dino Bravo. I've never seen him do any of this, so it's kind of odd. But we conclude this week's Superstars. We learn next week on the program, guys, the Big Boss Man, the Hart Foundation, the Blue Blazer, Ravishing Rick Rude, Outlaw Ron Bass, and the Mighty Hercules. Hell of a show next week. Plus, Hacksaw Jim Duggan returning to the Brother Love Show. First time since SummerSlam. See what happens there. All of that and the best segment of all, Bobby Heenan presents in-ring action from Terry Taylor, now known as the Red Rooster.
Love it. Love it. You got to pump it up. You got to promote the Red Rooster.
Can't wait till next week's Superstars, guys. Another intriguing episode with the first mention of this year's Survivor Series, the Thanksgiving night tradition, at least now, returns to the Richfield Coliseum. Can't wait for the card to be announced, the big matches. We kind of touched on that a little bit. Also, Terry Taylor with Bobby Heenan, we learn. And, of course, Hercules no longer with Bobby Heenan, so Terry kind of replaces Hercules' spot, at least for now. Plus, the final syndicated matches of JYD and Don Muraco. And if all of that wasn't enough, Mr. Perfect has arrived, for those who haven't seen. So lots going on right now as we roll off to the following day, Wrestling Challenge for October 9th. All right, here we go. Wrestling Challenge, October 9th. Tape back September 14th, Louisville, Kentucky, Louisville Gardens, or as my grandparents would call it, Louisville. They would tell you that's the proper pronunciation down there in Kentucky. And here we go. Bobby Heenan, Gorilla Monsoon on commentary, one of the greatest commentary teams, I think most people would say. And we go to the ring for Brutus the Barber Beefcake, taking on John Ziegler. And we already talked a little about the Barber, so we'll kind of breeze through this one. Heenan, though, has some extra fun this week, burying Ziegler for having a giant Z on his ass. And of course, Brudi going to put him to sleep here, get the win 228. And of course, a little post-match haircutting for good measure. So you said you never really got into Brutus, and nor did I. It felt like even though he had this shtick forever coming out of WrestleMania 3, he really didn't hit his stride for me until about 1990. And then I kind of just, through attrition, through osmosis, I just bought into it. And he became like another semi-main eventer to me. Unfortunately, we know what's going to happen to Brutus. He's going to come another summer meeting with a another injury to the face, this time legitimate. And that's going to put him on the shelf full-time for the rest of his life, basically. But for right now, Brutai looking good, and he's taking on the Outlaw. We'll have more on that in the weeks to come, guys. Don't you worry. I don't know if we can do 2 segments on that feud, John, so we'll roll on. And we haven't touched on this yet. Right now, guys, we're going to go off to a special interview. Mean Gene up on the stage. Craig DeGeorge no more. He's gone from the company. Mean Gene replacing Craig. And now here on Wrestling Challenge, his brother Love has moved to Superstars. Gene is going to be speaking with the former Intercontinental Champion, the Honky Tonk Man, and Jimmy Hart.
All right. How you doing, Colonel?
How do I feel? I feel horrible. That's how I feel.
Sorry I asked the question. Honky Tonk Man is a former Intercontinental Champion. The consensus of many right now that no matter how hard you try, you're not going to be able to tune this guitar up for the Warrior. What about it?
I wouldn't say that. I wouldn't say it's not tuned for the Warrior, because I think about 50 million people saw the Honky Tonk Man play a little blast from the past for the Ultimate Warrior. The only thing I didn't do was pick my belt up when I left him laying there like garbage.
Cheap
and
shot.
I guarantee you, you know, the Honky Tonk Man and Jimmy Hart being great musical composers that we are, we got a new tune. I stayed up all night long writing it. In fact, I hadn't slept in about 48 hours. And we named it the Broken Down Warrior Blues.
Wait a minute, Jimmy Hart. What is he talking about? What's the name of that song?
It's called the Broken Down Warrior Blues. Are you deaf?
The Broken Down Warrior Blues. I can't believe that.
That's right. Because if Warrior, you think the tune I played for you was a good one, you wait till you hear this Broken Down Warrior Blues. The Honky Tonk Man's gonna play for you nationwide, country to country.
All right, just a second. Honky Tonk, not the most popular band in this great venue. Honky Tonk, you know, many are saying, as I talk to them around the World Wrestling Federation, that the Warrior could be the greatest Intercontinental Champion of all time.
Got that right.
You said, who said it? You said, that's who said it. He could be the greatest of all time. No, sir. He's not. He won't ever be the greatest of all time. The Honky Tonk Man is the greatest Intercontinental Champion of all time. I will always be the greatest of all time. And I promise you this, by nook, by crook, or by guitar, Warrior, I'm coming to get my belt back. Let's go, Jimmy. Thank you very much.
All right, so we go back in time real quick there, John. We see a clip from when Honky Tonk bashed the guitar over the Warrior's head, vowing to regain his Intercontinental title. Now, the heels then endlessly refer to Honky's next hit tune, the Broken Down Warrior Blues, as Honk still professes to be the greatest Intercontinental Champion of all time. So we talked about the Warrior earlier. Let's talk a little bit about your thoughts on the Honky Tonk Man and this feud in general.
Love me some HTM. I feel like Honky Tonk Man is kind of like the perfect heel for that era. Not one of those guys that's like a real crazy work rate guy. He's a really heat magnet where he's going to get the crowd into it. And every move he does, whether it's simplistic or not, whether it's shake, rattle, and roll or just simple punch, they just hate his guts. He's like the perfect heat magnet. I love everything about him. Him and Jimmy Hart are perfect together. Him losing the title in the fashion he did at SummerSlam 88 to Warrior really enhanced the Warrior because the crowd is so amped for Warrior, is so pumped. Then he destroys them. They just stay at that level where they're so amped. So when he comes back and he's got to get his heat back, somehow he hits with the guitar. I mean, then you have the longer matches. I feel like that was a great trajectory of the feud and a really, good way to do it. Saturday night's, this is months in advance, but the Saturday night's main event match is good. I even like the Prism Network match at the Philly Spectrum. I feel like, which is longer than the Saturday night's main event match. I feel like that was great. I don't know. I love this feud, and I love kind of the way they built it up because it really made Warrior look like, man, this guy is a monster. But then Honky Tonk Man is going to take out the old guitar, and he's going to get his title back. Oh, so we think. But I just love the feud. Great, good stuff from HTM, who really was kind of the catalyst to get Warrior to that next level.
That's very true. They needed somebody to do it. And for all the people that shame Honky for refusing the job to Randy Savage or whatever that was at the beginning of the year, when it was time to do business at SummerSlam, you want to talk about doing business. Not only did he take a pinfall loss he did it in 30 seconds, and he didn't half-ass it either. I mean, go back and watch his selling in those bumps. And the first wave of matches they have on the house shows after SummerSlam, they don't go any more than 3, 4, or 5 minutes. The first wave, they're gonna bring it back again, but it's basically disqualifications or countouts. The match never really gets going. It's Honky trying to one-up the Warrior, and Warrior just throwing him all around the ring in the ridiculous bumps night after night after night, And I remember Honky in his first shoot interview many, many moons ago, back in the 90s maybe, asking Hercules, Hercules, you feuded with them, before me, and you're a better worker than I am. How did you work? Hercules was like, brother, there's no way to work around it. You just work with it. And Honky said he just went with it and took all those bumps, but to do it every night, that's one thing I never really paid attention to before. He was selling like that for Warrior on all of these house shows. So I give him more credit than I ever did in the past in regards to, because Honky would get, blamed for having a lazy work ethic, if you will. It's funny, you can't see my notes, and literally the last note I have for this was heat magnet, which is something you said, and I totally 100% agree. That's what Honky Tonk was. Great shtick, great promo, great gimmick. He knew how to play to the fans, but he could bump, when he wanted to, and he did it here for the Warrior. Sadly, this is Honky's last real big run, like he's headlining the B shows right now with Warrior on top, and after that, Honky never really recovers from this.
One of those things where he finally does business. Well, supposedly, allegedly, finally does business. Don't know if that Savage thing. I mean, we've heard that a million times. Right. But I don't know how accurate it is true, is not true. But then he finally decides to do business, and then it's like, oh, we're going to put, he kind of falls off a cliff a little bit. So it's one of those things where maybe he should have done business. Don't do business, because then Vince can't de-push you, kind of thing. So it's weird, but. Obviously, he stayed for several years and making a good chunk of money, but he's never quite the HTM, the longest reigning Intercontinental Champion. He never quite, like you said, regains that momentum that he once had as that ultimate heel.
Yeah, it's funny to think he's going to be here for more than 2 more years, and I can't think of anything of any real merit they're going to do with him. I mean, blues, I'm not saying... Well, I don't. He did get to perform in front of who knows how many people were really at WrestleMania 6, right? They didn't do the greatest job, but I dug that song, Hunka Hunka Honky Love.
Yeah, not bad.
He works Hogan at a Saturday night's main event. I'm sure he got paid for that, but in general, no long-term feuds, nothing like that by way of the Honky Tonk Man. So I'm enjoying watching him and what he's doing here for the Warriors. We go on with Wrestling Challenge. A couple of matches to look at here, guys. Birdman, Koko B, wear out. Taking on Tom Stone. Quick one this week. Only goes about 1:40. Birdman got to deliver a missile drop kick. And then, holy fuck, I don't drop F-bombs every segment, but I had to write it here. Ghostbuster basically kills Tom Stone dead, and the Birdman got to pick up the win. Nobody delivered the Ghostbuster, the Brainbuster, quite like Koko Beware. We've been covering him Memphis 85, and he's hitting it every week on a job guy in that studio. Oh, my God, I feel bad for those guys. And he's doing it here in the WWF.
I just saw literally the other day a compilation of like the best Ghostbusters. Man, he would just level these guys, like almost like break their neck and break their head. Like, holy moly, what a finish.
All these years, I just assumed that the Ray Parker Jr. Ghostbusters song was where the name originated, but Koko explained randomly out of the blue on a promo with Lance Russell in 85 that he named it the Ghostbuster because the minute it lands, your soul leaves your body. And I have to, I can't really doubt that, think about that for a minute, the way those guys land. Yeah. It's a believable finisher. And I think maybe, does he do it because of his size? It's like, I gotta have a believable finisher.
I guess that could definitely be it. And there's nothing more believable than when he gets like Iron Mike Sharp or somebody bigger up.
Yes.
And he just nails him with it. I mean, he does not let up at all. And it's funny, I was talking to Bret the Hitman Hart. He was saying, he was supposed to wrestle Koko and lose at one point, and he refused to take the Ghostbuster, and Koko couldn't understand why. And he said, have you ever watched back of how you hit the guys with it? He goes, it's not exactly the safest move. And he goes, I don't care if you've hit guys bigger than me. I don't trust it. And I feel like a lot of the other guys should have said, excuse me, Koko, I don't know if I trust it.
Well, I don't know how many people were in. Koko wasn't hitting that Brainbuster or Ghostbuster on too many guys that would have had the authority to turn it down. I don't think Koko was usually the low man on the totem pole, which again, kind of odd to see him in that Hulk Hogan tag team, but it was kind of cool as well. You needed that guy that was going to do, like you talked about, that job early on or in the match. And so it was nice to see somebody throw him a bone. Obviously, Hogan respected him. Hogan wasn't going to let nobody on that team he didn't want on that team, right? So, I mean, he clearly respected Koko to some degree to let him, work as part of the Mega Powers group. But we go on to the ring again. The big boss man out here, one of my favorites of all time. Manager Slick in his corner, taking on a guy by the name of Scott Hudson. More on that in just a moment. We get an insert promo from the boss man and Slick, who demonstrates how to use handcuffs. They say it's a simple flick of the wrist. And boss man looked like he had used these cuffs a time or two, and we've seen him use it basically every week here on TV. As Scott Hudson going to go for it here, might as well, landing a drop kick that doesn't budge the boss man. Then Hudson with a running crossbody, but he's caught by boss man and driven down to the mat. From there, it's the signature leg straddle spot over the middle rope. And love this new move. He's only been doing it a couple weeks, but he basically picks the guy up in a torture rack and then drops him back in a Samoan drop. Just looks devastating. And of course, the boss man slam going to score the win here. 1 minute and 39 seconds. Big boss man, one of my favorite heels, one of my favorite baby faces during this first run here in the company.
Love me some boss man. At this point, you got to be fearful for Hogan because it's like, man, this guy is going to kick Hogan's ass. He's bigger. He's younger. He's actually somehow faster, even though he's bigger. Like he had it all. Love the gimmick. Love the pairing with Slick. Just what an awesome heel. What a kind of just an introduction. And I know it's kind of one of those things where it's like a bridge feud where Hogan is going to need that feud and a longer feud. Like who's he going to feud with next? Like it's going to go to Savage. How do you get there? Boss Man is a perfect guy because he's believable. You could sell out MSG, the Boston Garden, in the same day and sell, 40,000 tickets in one day versus one opponent because so many people want to see. I just thought so believable, so cool. What a perfect heel. And maybe not, Hogan versus Boss Man at WrestleMania, but it could be Hogan versus Boss Man everywhere. Every house show, Madison Square Garden, Boston Garden. Like everywhere you want to go, Hogan and Boss Man could be the main event and sell out.
See, here's the thing, too, with the boss man is, like you said, they needed something to fill the gap all the way to WrestleMania. They're not going to do Hogan and Savage before WrestleMania. They need something to, fill that time with Hogan on the house shows, making that money. And boss man's it. He's going to be it. Hogan's going to work probably a little Akeem here and there, but he's coming out of these Bad News Brown matches, these King Haku matches, and he's moving up a step, I guess you could say, with the big boss man, right? And nothing more violent than watching him early on. These blows in 1988 with the nightstick. I mean, I'm sure he was, I don't think he was trying to crack any ribs or anything, but man, compared to some of the ones he used later, these are pretty damn violent looking. And up until now, he had been handcuffing the guys to the ropes. This is the first week he actually handcuffs them behind their backs. Poor Scott Hudson, who takes a beating from the boss man here, and he can't defend himself at all. He doesn't even have a free hand. Just what a gimmick, what a talent was Ray Traylor. He was fun as Big Bubba, but once he became the boss man, just awesome. I loved it from here. Loved the babyface turn, even though it made no sense. I don't take bribes. I said, I watched you take about 20 of them, and you beat the crap out of people every week, but you don't take bribes. And so, but I followed that babyface run all the way through Nails and beyond that awful match with Bigelow and whatnot. So I was always a huge boss man fan. So to go back and watch this, I love it. And to this day, I felt like he was robbed at Royal Rumble 89 when your buddy pulled him out. He's sore loser.
Yes.
Hogan. I know I know you're a fan, but you got to admit he did not like losing very much. Did that Hulk Hogan fellow?
A lot of heel tactics by the Hulks there.
Indeed, certainly. And so, big boss man. Looking forward to it. Scott Hudson is a name that a lot of people, when I Googled this online, I said this isn't. And for those who don't know what I'm referencing, there was an announcer once upon a time in Global and then later WCW. Yep. Scott Hudson. Some people were debating, was this Scott? I think it looks a little bit like Scott. And I looked at it and I said, I don't see that. And I couldn't find anything anywhere that suggested that Scott Hudson was ever a wrestler.
Didn't look like him to me, no.
Yeah. So I'm going to go with that's not the Scott Hudson. That's my opinion. And hopefully somebody can prove me wrong if it is indeed wrong. But you're in agreement with me though, John? We think that this is not that Scott Hudson?
Definitely not. Doesn't look like it to me. Didn't
all
at
right,
all.
Guys. We're going to go off to the event center again right now as we hear Sean Mooney talking with the likes of the Junkyard Dog and the Bolsheviks.
So much going on out there right now in the World Wrestling Federation. So many great superstars. Of course, at the top of the list, the champion, the Macho Man, Randy Savage. And what about this guy? He is as loyal as a Junkyard Dog. And that is exactly who he is. Right now, the Junkyard Dog is standing by.
Well, here in the World Wrestling Federation, everybody got something to do something with. So my boys out in the backyard, what you can hear them out there now, weaving and bobbing and beating on the old nasty cars, getting the riff-rats out of the side of them, but so we can beat them up, crush them up, and send them out of town. Like some of the bad, bad boys that's around here in the World Wrestling Federation. You start thinking about them like one man, Miss Bessie, or Outlaw Ron Bass. You look on down the line, you see King Haku, a man that don't know what he gonna do. You look on back, and you can look back further back, all the way to some holler race, I call it. But it's a new day, a new dog in town, and I'm ready to get in the ring with each and everybody, and we gonna naturally get down.
Of course, I mentioned the Junkyard Dog is loyal. That is until someone crosses his path, and that's when he will show just how mean he can be. A big, powerful tag team out there in the World Wrestling Federation. The Russian Bolsheviks, Nikolai Volkov and Boris Zhukov.
There's a lot of good teams out there that we want to get into the ring, that we want to show that the Bolsheviks are the greatest. Like you, Demolition. We want you in the ring the most to get the tag team belts. But especially to you, Powers of Pain, what you have done to us. We want to destroy you, Powers of Pain, because you're nothing but a stumbling block. You're keeping us away from the title. And you have this Baron in the corner, whoever he is. I think you're scared, that's why you put this Baron there. But we want to get you, Powers of Pain, any way we can. Это правда, товарищ.
To pravda, tovariš. Ja pozdravljam sav sovjetski narod, jak živje here in the United States. Ja govorim now that all the teams, every time ih zabijemo. Power of Pain, ja ih zabijemo do čarnu zemlju. Demolition, you're number one, you're going down.
Nikolai Volkov and Boris Zhukov, they are the Russian Bolsheviks. Now, Nikolai Volkov, a former World Wrestling Federation Tag Team Champion, he would like nothing better than to, along with his comrade, take the World Wrestling Federation Tag Team Championship away from Axe and Smash of Demolition. There's more action coming your way. Stay tuned.
That was, those interviews happened, John, and Bolsheviks have been talking Powers of Pain for a couple months now, but now they've factored in Demolition to their plans, which is peculiar because they're both heel teams. But the Russians want the tag team titles, and so they claim they're coming for Demolition. Be careful what you wish for, Nikolai and Boris.
Man, the Bolsheviks, I don't know, like obvious heel, Russia, Cold War, it's so obvious, but it's like, guys, you're never going to win the tag titles. Come on, you know that. You're never going to snip it. Come on.
Yeah, even though as a kid I was rooting for certain people, I believed anybody could win, right? When the Bolsheviks are in the ring, I never thought they had a chance of winning. And for months now, I've been calling for it. I didn't even know that it happened. I'm going to cheat and break the kayfabe here, guys. We are going to get a match between Demolition and the Bolsheviks while the Demolition are heels. However, it will never air on TV until the summer of '89. And so by then, we presumed it was filmed when they were baby faces. So I can't wait to get to that match somewhere in '89 to see how they picked apart the Bolsheviks. So here's my new favorite tag team, though, John, talking about the Fabulous Rougeaus brothers, Jacques and Ramon, with Jimmy Hart now by their side. Recently acquired the services of one Jimmy Hart, taking on Mike Richards and Reno Riggins. We get an insert promo from the Rougeaus, putting over the fact that they are now All-American Boys. And I do believe last week was the first time they used that moniker. So it's just now developing, guys, as they may be your next door neighbor before too long. What did you think of this new Rougeau gimmick, the Fabulous Rougeaus coming to America?
Arguably, you could say the greatest, when they use it, the greatest theme song of all time. It's arguable.
Yep.
The theme song is unbelievable. What a gimmick, because they're so condescending that it's almost like over the top, hilarious. But then on the other side, you're like, these guys are just like rubbing it in our faces. Like, these guys are a-holes. You know what I mean? It's like, to me, it's such a great gimmick because they are just being so sarcastic and they're being just like slapping in the face with it. Like, oh, we're going to have little flags and hey, we're Montreal to Memphis. We love you, USA. We love, it's just hilarious. Like, what an awesome idea. And I was talking to Jacques and Raymond last year about it. They gave Vince all the credit. They said Vince was the one that was like, it's got to be really over the top and you've got to be really condescending. And they're like, yeah, but won't this get us over? It's like, no, trust me. He goes, you will be hated. He was right.
Ahead of its time, right? Because back then we did not have something that cerebral. I'm a bad guy. I do bad things.
Right.
Maybe you have a bad guy, a heel that comes out there and explains their version, their take on something, but never to this level has anybody thought and worked that hard. Just every little aspect, every promo. Call 1-800-FABULOUS and let us know what city you want to see us move to. Just every little intricate thing they do in their promos. Yeah. Just stupid things that are just hokey as hell. They change their jackets so that Jacques wearing Raymond's jacket. Raymond's wearing Jacques, and they say the wrong name, and they go, I'm just kidding. I'm actually Jacques, and he's... Why does that work? I don't know. But I pop for everything they've been doing for months now. And it's like, I got it, but I got it after the fact. I didn't pick up on any of this to this degree, until I was an adult. So I love the Rougeau gimmick, way ahead of its time.
Jimmy Hart in there too. It's like, man, this is perfect.
10 years after this would have been one of the greatest things that ever happened on Earth, right? It would have been huge. Yep. It would have got, they would have pushed it more, but it's really just Jacques being Jacques in many ways. If you've ever heard stories about Jacques anyway.
Yes.
But it's great stuff here. We're going to see the Rougeaus in the ring. Reno Riggins going to surprise Jacques with a monkey flip early on, but a tag out to Mike Richards, who runs the ropes, and Raymond going to pull it down. Richards taking a tumble to the outside. Rougeau's going to pick Mike Richards apart from there, landing an assisted somersault senton, which we would see the Quebecers use quite a bit later on, but Jacques doing the flip here, not so good. Even Gorilla going to kind of bury it a little bit on commentary. Match goes 207. This is not the first time I've seen him use that move, and every time Gorilla buries it, because every time it doesn't look so good. So I love that later on Jacques let Pierre be the man that comes off the top, because that was a thing of beauty when the Quebecers were in the ring.
Oh my God, yeah. And it's crazy to think, because Jacques I think is a great athlete. You can do those flips in the ring and all this stuff. PCO is even better athlete. For whatever reason, even though he's bigger and obviously he's a big guy, he just was more athletic. He could just nail it better.
Yeah, it was great looking when he did it. The Rougeaus not so much, but I do like Les Bombes de Rougeau, or as I guess they're going to be all American boys, it'll just be the Rougeau bomb. From that point forward, right now we're going to go off to the event center. Sean Mooney standing by with the likes of Bad News Brown and the WWF Champion, the Macho Man, Randy Savage.
We are back at the World Wrestling Federation Event Center. Bad News Brown from Harlem. He plans to go through anyone who stands in his way on his march to the World Wrestling Federation Championship. You have seen him in the ring. He is often merciless on his opponents, and he is out there in the World Wrestling Federation. Right now, Bad News Brown is standing by with comment.
I'm sick and tired of waiting. I'm sick and tired of waiting. Ever since I've come to the WWF, I'm undefeated. I've beaten everybody that they put in front of me, and now I'm running out of victims. Now I'm running out of opponents. Who do I have to go after next, huh? Do I have to get the referee? Do I have to get the president of the WWF and get him in the ring and beat him up? It doesn't matter to me, because I like nobody anyway. I don't care who it is. But let me tell you one thing. You always got to understand that when I get into the ring, I have no mercy on nobody whatsoever. I have no sympathy for nobody, and I take no prisoners. So when you get into the ring, have your insurance paid up and your will made out.
Bad News Brown, 6'1", 271 pounds of cold steel determination. He is one you've got to watch out for out there in the World Wrestling Federation, and he is after the World Wrestling Federation Championship. Well, right now, the champion is standing by. He is the Macho Man, Randy Savage.
The World Wrestling Federation champion is going to be sharp, It'll be quick. It'll be strong, to face all these #1 contenders that are coming one by one, And I'm going to be sharp, Elizabeth, because my competitive edge is right there, right there. Super sharp, and super quick. And I'm talking to everybody, at the World Wrestling Federation Championship belt. Go after the Macho Man Randy Savage, The inspiration, of the madness is Elizabeth leading down that aisle, But the gold, the World Wrestling Federation Championship belt, like people before me defended it with honor, I got that same honor, And I got a lot of this, I got a lot of heart. And whenever anybody comes and thinks they're going to take this away from me, it's no party,
All right, John, we hear from both sides. That feud just getting boiling. Bad News Brown said, hey, I've taken out everybody in my path up until this point. I'm undefeated, at least on TV, and so that's the way we're playing it here. Bad News says there's nobody left but the WWF champion himself, Randy Savage, who says, hey, he's got to be sharp, he's got to be quick. Lots of challengers coming at him right now. Savage doesn't really have one feud coming out of SummerSlam. We've actually seen him work Andre DiBiase, King Haku, Dino Bravo, and now we're working into Bad News here on the house shows, but this is going to have a little fuel behind it before too long.
To me, if you look at this, right, when Warrior was champion, no offense, it didn't like spark business, that it didn't go up. Like, it wasn't like crazy business with him as champion. When Savage is champion, he's feuding all these guys. They maintained the Hogan run.
Yes.
I know Hogan's still there, but they maintain business. They still are drawing well. So it's not just who the guy is feuding with. It's Savage. He was the right guy at the right time, the right champion. Obviously, the rub from Hogan, the being the mega powers, it worked. But Savage was an awesome champion, and to me, an underrated and underappreciated draw as world champion.
Yeah, you were right, because I've been following that since he's won the belt every month. The house shows kind of stay pretty steady. I mean, there's some down weeks, but it really depends on what's on the card. It's not necessarily Savage that's on the card that's causing maybe the Boston Garden to draw half full or things like that. But in general, ever since Savage has been here, the ratings have been pretty steady. The house shows have been pretty steady. And, Hogan's back now. So now they're really going to start packing him in, because now we got Hogan and Savage on a lot of these cards. And we're going to go on with the show. We got more action in the ring, guys. Hacksaw Jim Duggan out here taking on Big Al Burke. We get an insert promo from Dino Bravo, Frenchie Martin, promising that Duggan will respect the flag of Quebec, as Duggan standing on the apron pre-match, and he's going to play to the crowd here, leading to Burke slapping him in the back of the head. Big mistake. Matchup going to end pretty abruptly here. Wind up slam in the 3-point stance and clothesline, giving Hacksaw the win, 1 minute and 13 seconds. And based on some of these promos here lately between Duggan and Bravo, I do believe we have flag matches coming around the corner.
That's definitely what it seems like. It's a little generic, a little obvious, maybe a little corny, maybe a little passé, but it's definitely what they're leading to with Duggan and Bravo for sure.
And of course, it being kid friendly by this point, you're not going to get these. Vince wasn't a big fan of gimmick matches anyway. We would get some occasional cage matches, but not a whole lot of other type of matches between foes. And in this instance, I agree. Even as a kid, I think my least favorite gimmick match was, it's a flag match. Hoping for anything else.
Lame, yeah.
Special report with Lord Alfred Hayes, a replay from Superstars last week, the Hercules babyface turn on Ted DiBiase and Bobby Heenan. But we get something a little different here on Wrestling Challenge, because Bobby Heenan is on commentary. And as I pointed out, he utilized these positions on Challenge and Primetime to continue telling the storyline. And Bobby clarifying that, hey, I just want Hercules to know I'm not mad at him. So it's just kind of the funny heel thing there by Bobby Heenan. And Hercules needs to be grateful that Bobby Heenan was thoughtful enough to find Hercules a new job. Look at the silver lining there, right? So I just loved Bobby Heenan would utilize these segments, and just the stuff he would say, always the best.
Let's just say this wasn't a good angle, and it was. But Heenan will make it into a good angle, and he made a good angle here into a better angle, because he's really getting Hercules over as a babyface, and he's really looking worse by worse every time he opens his mouth and says something silly like that. So it's so funny, listening back to it. But when you're actually like a kid and you're like, what this guy is like, he's a total jerk. He's he's really making fun of Hercules here and saying he got him a job. What? He's been a wrestler. He had a job. Heenan screwed him. You know what I mean? Just really good stuff here from Heenan.
I used to groan at the Heenan Patera feud in general overall, and now Heenan takes a great bump. When they're doing the debate and the podiums and whatnot with the belt around the throat, but. Overall, with Patera involved, but Bobby, God bless him, those prime times every week. I mean, using almost every segment to just lambaste Patera, prisoner number 59919. I'll have and just kind of giving it to him every week, and it really helped it for me. It was like, man, I don't really like Patera. I don't even know that I want to see him get the best of Bobby Heenan, but I sure would like to see how he responds, to these things that Bobby's saying at the very least, and so. Bobby always really, like you said, he made something good, great. He made something that wouldn't have been anything at all into something watchable. And that's what was the craft of Bobby Heenan. And he really utilized those TV shows to help get things over. Even when they weren't really telling the story, he would tell the story.
Big time. The best.
So we go back to the ring. We just saw them come out and make the save against Demolition not that long ago. Now the British Bulldogs going to be in action, taking on Barry Horowitz. And we're going right back down to Crockett country. George South going to be the partner of Barry Horowitz here, as Davey Boy rocking a new mullet style haircut, buzzed on the sides to make Eddie Guerrero proud, I'd have to think. Horowitz, though, going to get a few seconds of time before he wisely tags out to poor George South, who just takes the brunt of the beating here, the running power slam from Davey Boy, the Dynamite, Saito suplex, Smith with a delayed vertical, and I'm guessing Dynamite threw a snap suplex in there somewhere that I missed because there's every match has one of those. But it is the superplex off the top rope from the formerly, or maybe still currently, broken-backed Dynamite. Why does he pick that move? I have no idea. Top rope superplex gets the win for the Bulldogs, 239, and poor George South had to earn his paycheck here this week.
To me, love the British Bulldogs. I know Dynamite was kind of injured, obviously, at this point, and kind of going towards maybe the end of his run. Obviously, this is really the start, really, for Davey Boy. If you look at it, they're kind of going in different directions. Such an awesome tag team. Arguably one of the greatest tag teams ever in the history of wrestling. Definitely one of the greatest WWF tag teams ever. But the most interesting thing to me about this match was Horowitz and George South. Because when I was like, oh, my God, I was like, wait a second. This is the team? Arguably the greatest WWF enhancement talent when you look at Horowitz. Arguably the greatest Crockett enhancement talent when you look at like South. So it's like you're putting those two guys together. Did they do that on purpose? Like I was just so curious with that team. And for whatever reason, wouldn't have remembered that in a million years that South and him actually teamed together in WWF. So I was like, wow, what an interesting pairing. Like how weird. And did whoever put that match together actually like in their head think like, this is a great enhancement guy here. This is a great enhancement. Let's put them together. Like I'm just curious about that.
Well, if that was the case, I would have hoped they would have gotten a little offense at it. It was a no.
I know nothing. They got destroyed. Yeah.
Even though Horowitz is from Florida, he was the North boy here, right? Because he had been with the company so long. Yes. They were like, "You come in and you tag out, and we'll do everything to poor George here."
Yes.
As we continue on, it is vignette number 4. I do find it odd that they're not playing the same vignette on both TV shows. So Superstars has its own. Challenge has its own for now. Maybe they'll flip-flop them later, I'm assuming. But right now we're off to another vignette involving Curt Hennig, but you can call him Mr. Perfect.
Curt Hennig, Mr. Perfect. You know, everything in my life has been absolutely perfect. And it's a lot of people's dream to be perfect. But with me, see, it's no dream. It's reality. It's life. And take the simple game of bowling. It's everybody's dream to bowl the perfect game. Well, being Mr. Perfect, you sit back on the couch, you put your feet up, and you relax because you are going to witness the perfect game. You see? The perfect game. What else would you expect from Mr. Perfect?
All right, so there it was, Curt Hennig bowling, Mr. Perfect, bowling a perfect game, 300 there, and we see several strikes. It wasn't just gimmick there for the most of the way. We even see the scorecard adding it up along the way, and just absolutely perfect once again. And one of my more favorite segments, because it goes on a little longer, we get to hear that cool generic music that they played for these Curt Hennig videos.
When you look at it, right, and you're thinking like, oh, he's doing all this stuff, he's perfect. And I know obviously there's going to be multiple takes, but I was listening to an old interview with Perfect. He said that he would nail it, maybe not in the first take, but he did everything in those videos, obviously, except for throw the football to himself. But he did actually do all those things, like not maybe perfectly, quote unquote, but he would actually be able to do that stuff. So what a freak athlete. He's like, I could hit a home run. I could hit, I could hit a shot. Like I could just do all this stuff and look really good doing it and bowl a perfect game.
Well,
which he didn't do, but he did hit a bunch of strikes.
Oh, absolutely. And, many moons ago, early on in the Bruce Pritchard podcast, he covered Mr. Perfect and he told the story of producing these vignettes for the Curt Hennig Perfect character. And he said it was crazy because they would practice before they would start shooting, and Hennig would do everything on the first try. He would hit a strike. He would throw a bullseye. He would do all these things. He said, and then when they started rolling, that's when, he only hit 7 pins, or it was like comical to them. Like, all right, not that he still couldn't do it. We see he does it, but it took a few tries, like you said. But when they weren't filming, that was when he was making basketball shots behind his back without even trying before they started filming. So I just thought that was kind of funny to know. But yeah, obviously he didn't do all of these things in one take, but still amazing that you're able to do it fast enough that you could do it in a day's span, right?
Right. And you're being filmed. So like, obviously you got to be a little bit more nervous because, I'm not fooling around here. They're actually filming it. I'm wasting everyone's time and money and everything. I got to do this stuff. I really got to do the darts. I really got to roll a strike. I really got to hit a home run. I really got to make a shot. So it's really such a fascinating thing of like, okay, we have to actually produce this thing. And by the way, pay everybody. So perfect. You better do good.
And no AI back then, guys. So that was all legit. That was all Kurt Hennig getting it done. As we get ready to wrap up Wrestling Challenge, we got one more match and one more feud to talk about this week on the Grenade John. And that is Ravishing Rick Rude right now taking on Joe Cruz in the ring, another Crockett guy. Rick Rude, of course, accompanied to the ring by Bobby Heenan, which means Gorilla Monsoon now rolling solo on commentary as Rude going to show off his body and the latest Cheryl Roberts tights. Of course, Jake Roberts ripping the last ones off as he tells the Louisville losers to take a look at the ravishing body of one Rick Rude. Of course, the ladies love it and the guys not so much. We get an insert promo from Rude here who tells the Snake that everyone knows that his wife Cheryl wants Rick Rude, but despite having better looking women at his disposal, Rude will take Cheryl simply because she's married to the Snake Man. And Rude, of course, going to blow a kiss to end that video. So we're going to separate this into a couple of questions for you, John. First, talk to me about the Rude character. Talk to me about the Rude promos.
Rude was awesome. One of the best. One of those guys, again, probably should have been WWF champion at some point. I don't know when. I don't know how you insert him in there, but just if you look at it, like perfect build, perfect look, perfect promo. Didn't really even need Heenan, and I know that was a problem with those two, that he kind of knew he didn't really need him, but they felt like that he needed him, and they kind of did play off each other well, but I could have seen him by himself and do perfectly fine and be, stand on his own heel. Arguably the greatest body ever in wrestling. If you look at it, he was awesome at promos. He was an awesome worker. He was a legit shooter, a legit tough guy. Nothing bad to say about Rude at all. I just thought he was kind of another one of those guys, kind of like a perfect wrestler, like almost could do everything you want as a wrestler and even have the look and the charisma. Yeah. Such a good promo. Got so much heat. I just felt like with him, for whatever reason, him and Jake, even though the feud was great and the Cheryl Roberts stuff was great, they did have some stinkers.
Oh my God. And I've had to watch every one of them, unfortunately, and it's been going
crazy, weird.
They filmed the initial, the slap or whatever, the issue between Cheryl and the crowd and Rick Rude at the TV taping before WrestleMania 4. It airs after WrestleMania, but you're talking April, May, June, July, August, September. We're in the 7th month of this feud now, and it's still hot because the stuff they're doing to each other back and forth is getting over. The crowd are eating it up. There was over a half year into this feud. It's about to come to an end. Spoiler alert, because we're going to move on to other things for both guys very shortly. But at this point in time, it's crazy to think how over. Now you talk about the matches. That's another story. Right. It starts off hot. We get about 2 minutes of Jake just Rude bumping all over for him. And then it's about 15 minutes of rest holds every night in every arena. Yep. And, that goes back to WrestleMania before the feud technically started. So it hasn't been fun watching these two, but it's coming to a close. And if you just watch all of the great angles, all the great promos, and maybe one of their matches near the end here, because right now in the house shows, we're doing Rude Awakening versus DDT matches. So the finish is guaranteeing somebody's hitting their finisher to score the win. And of course, no move, not even the leg drop, got a bigger pop than when Jake connected with that DDT. So him hitting the DDT, pinning Rick Rude every night. Cheryl comes in, slaps Rude afterwards, and then Rude even gets Damien, the trifecta right there, the crowd eating it up. And maybe the match wasn't great, but everybody's going to forget about it when they see the DDT and everything that follows.
When you look at it, too, it's like, man, Rude was having good matches with Ultimate Warrior, of all people. Obviously, Piper. I mean, he just has good matches all the way around with everybody. But for some reason, it could be chemistry. You never know who's not going to have chemistry. Even though, hey, Wrestler A and Wrestler B, meaning Wrestler A, Jake, Wrestler B, Rude, like both have good chemistry with other guys, and they're both really, really good workers, period. I mean, great workers. For some reason, didn't mesh well together in the ring. But like you said, the crowd loved that feud. I mean, they would really got over.
I think Rude found himself here in 88. I watched him develop. He was the good-looking guy, but he was also the badass good-looking guy. Not that he wasn't badass still here, but he was more of a lover also here versus what he was doing in Crockett when he was teaming with Manny Fernandez. That was a badass guy. I mean, that was more of the real Rick Rude, right? Where the one-handed knockout and whatnot. And here in the WWF, he's slowly, at the beginning of January into February, we saw him basically put everything together. He moved away from that body breaker submission hold, which I hated, and started doing the neck breaker. He began wearing the airbrush on the tights, just everything he was doing. He was blowing the kisses, the posing, the swiveled hips began, right? Or everything. He put it all together around the same time. And I think it just took him much of 88 to get to be that worker that, you know, understood where we needed to be to perform at a more entertaining level, because even his matches with Steamboat, not in WCW, those were fine, but his stuff here at the beginning of the year with Steamboat was pretty much on par with the stuff with Jake. And I don't know that I've ever seen a bad Steamboat match, but those weren't too hot either. So it's definitely going to change. Like you said, even with the Warrior, those matches going to get good. So I'm looking forward to that. Right now, though, this should be an easy one. Rick Rude out here with Joe Cruz. And Rick going to get cocky early on, posing and gyrating, giving Cruz enough time to regroup. Rude then missing a charge in the corner, and Cruz going to land a pair of arm drags here, which the Ravishing One doesn't like too well. Comes fighting back, going to do a little flexing, posing here, the old butt flex, which Gorilla calls absolutely disgusting here on commentary. And the Rude Awakening neckbreaker gets the win, 1 minute and 46 seconds. And then, of course, after the matchup, the Rude Awakening kiss to a lovely young lady wearing bright yellow out of the crowd here. So Rick Rude got 2 Rude Awakenings going here, and just more of the same here, and I'm not complaining.
Love me some Rick Rude. He's one of the all-time best, in my view. Just awesome.
Well, we talked about the feud. We talked about Rick Rude. Now we're going to go to the event center with Sean Mooney standing by with the other side, talking about Jake the Snake Roberts and his wife Cheryl. We're also going to hear from the Hart Foundation.
Welcome back to the event center. Some very intense individuals out there. Jake the Snake Roberts. He is certainly an intense individual, and he is a man of pride and honor. He will defend his wife to the end. I'm talking about Cheryl Roberts. Well, right now, Jake is standing by with a few comments, in particular about ravishing Rick Rude.
I can't believe you, Rick Rude, getting all upset just because I pulled your pants down, my man. How in the hell do you think I feel after everything you've done to me for the past few months? I mean, you insult me, you grab my wife, you bend her down, try to break her arm, snapping her down her knees. Don't you think you're a tough man? And now you're upset because I pulled your tights down. Tough. That's right, tough. If you don't like it, why don't you step up here and do something about it, my man? I'm an easy man to find, and I'm glad to make anybody happy.
Jake the Snake Roberts. He has it out for ravishing Rick Rude. The two will meet somewhere out there in the World Wrestling Federation in the very near future. The Hart Foundation. Jimmy Mouth of South no longer their manager, but he is still taking a piece of the action. Let's hear from Bret the Hitman Hart and Jim the Anvil Neidhart.
I am so mad. I don't know what I'm mad at myself. I don't know what, but I am upset. They're stacking them up one after another. The Russians, the Bolsheviks. They're stacking up the Demolition. Then they got the Rougeau brothers. But there's only one thing on our mind. That's those World Heavyweight Championship belts. And we are going to come back and haunt the Demolition. But first, we got to clear up a little matter with the Rougeau brothers. And then we got to clear up a little matter with the Bolsheviks. And it's all going to happen. Whether Slick wants to get involved, but we're expecting you, Jimmy Hart, to get involved. We are going to be ready, and we are mad. I am still mad. I don't even know.
The Hart Foundation, Bret the Hitman Hart, and Jim the Anvil Neidhart. Doing fine without Jimmy Mouth of the South Hart. But as you know, now the Mouth of the South is the manager of the Fabulous Rougeaus brothers, making for a very interesting situation.
All right, so we talked about Rick Rude. We talked about the feud with Jake. Now we've heard from the other side. Meanwhile, we've talked about the Rougeaus, and we have not talked about their feud with the Hart Foundation. So I guess it's a good way to close up shop here. Let's talk a little bit about that feud, because I like another little weird dynamic that had never been played into wrestling before. Jimmy Hart takes on the Rougeau brothers as his new team, but he still has the contracts of the Hart Foundation. And then Jimmy gives his contract, the Harts, to the Rougeaus. So the Rougeaus are now making money off of the team they're feuding with the Hart Foundation. And it's like, we don't care if you win or lose. We're getting paid either way, in these matches, and go out there and win them. We want you to win, because every time you win, we get half the money. And it's just an interesting dynamic that we've never seen before or again.
Very cool, very different, very interesting, a little bit of a twist, if you will. I just thought that was very, very cool of let's make this interesting without it just being about the in-ring, because obviously when they get in the ring, they're going to have this great match, but let's throw Jimmy Hart into the mix, let's throw the contracts into the mix, and let's really, make one team the real baby faces, and we're going to make the other team really hated heels. Just really smart, well done stuff. I don't know if, like you said, I don't know if they really ever did that before. I know they did all its trade contracts and obviously the Hercules stuff, but this is definitely a different wrinkle altogether.
Yeah, and it wasn't even just the manager. They realized to get more heat, yeah, Jimmy Hart's getting paid, but what if the wrestlers got paid? What if the Rougeaus got paid for the Hart Fund? And you think about the dynamic at the end of the day. Hey, if we win, we're going to make a shit ton of money. But even if we lose, we're going to make a little bit of money off your ass. So I love that dynamic and the whole feud and whatnot. As we wrap up Wrestling Challenge next week on the program, it's a who's who. The Rockers here. Akeem back in action. Looking forward to that. Greg the Hammer Valentine, $1 Million Man Ted DiBiase, Intercontinental Champion, the Ultimate Warrior. Even the Young Stallions being paired back together. Plus a special interview with Jake and Cheryl Roberts. Now, for anybody been following the Grenade, they know this, John, but basically for the last couple months, they've split Paul Roma and Jimmy Powers apart. They've been working singles here. We've even seen a little bit of it on TV, but with the Survivor Series around the corner, we're going to see a couple of Young Stallion matches here on TV. I guess kind of remind everybody that they were a team.
I don't know what they were doing, like to kind of start and stop with them, because I remember that at this point I thought they were gone. They're like, oh, that's right, they're in the Survivor Series 88 match together. So they're not gone, but they will be soon be gone.
Right.
Very like helter-skelter with them.
Start and stop. I'm sure Paul loved that a whole lot.
Oh, God, no, yeah.
Well, guys, we got one more TV. We're going to run it down real quick, talking about Primetime Wrestling, October 11th, 1988.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Prime Time Wrestling. I'm Vince McMahon, substituting for Gorilla Monsoon, who shall return next week. And, of course, sitting over across this way, as he always does, Bobby the Brain Heenan, who was...
The host.
The host? Well, you weren't exactly a very gracious host, as I recall, not long ago in a recent interview, when you attempted to sell Hercules to the $1 Million Man, Ted DiBiase. We're going to have an update on that this week.
I don't think you understand, or the people don't understand, or probably Hercules don't understand. It's nothing personal. It's just business. I was offered an amount of money for a service. I gave him the service. He wanted to buy a slave. I had what he wanted. That's simple. I have nothing against Herc. He filled a void that I needed at the time. It's his business.
I see. Well, I think he has a little something against you, Mr. Heenan, right now.
I don't know why. He'd have been cared for very well by Mr. DiBiase. He'd have lived a life of luxury as he would be accustomed to. I mean, the position he had, he earned. Simple.
He earned his new position.
I would say so, yeah.
What position do you think he's going to earn now?
Well, if he's smart, he'll take DiBiase up on the offer and do whatever DiBiase wants. He'll be a slave. If he wants to whip that chain around the air and make a lot of noise, he's going to get himself hurt bad.
I see. It could be very well that you might be on Hercules' hit list.
I don't think Hercules has a list.
Oh, no?
No.
If it is, it's a short one?
Well, if it is, somebody wrote it for him.
I see. Let's get into now, ladies and gentlemen, a matchup involving Koko B squaring off against Dino Bravo.
All right, so I wanted to talk to you. I wanted to have a lot of fun here with this one, but unfortunately this week, no Gorilla Monsoon. Gorilla Monsoon absent, replacing him. Vince McMahon out here with Bobby the Brain Heenan. I talked about this when I covered October news. Unfortunately, right around this time, Gorilla's father passed away, and so he's going to miss a couple episodes of Primetime. Vince McMahon going to fill in for him. This is the second episode with Vince over the last 3 weeks. So we hear Vince there. They're talking about Heenan selling the mighty Hercules and the opening intro soundbite there. Bobby says Hercules got everything he had coming to him. So again, using Primetime to build upon his own feud. Right now, guys, we're going to go back to another soundbite, this time we're coming out of the matchup, talking about the feud between Dino Bravo and Hacksaw Jim Duggan.
Dino Bravo victorious in the Boston Garden, and you wonder whether or not he would be victorious against someone the stature of Hacksaw Jim Duggan.
Well, I would think so. Hacksaw Jim Duggan is just basically an illiterate. He doesn't have the power of Dino Bravo. He doesn't have the wrestling technology of Dino Bravo, and he doesn't have Frenchie Martin. He just got a miserable 2x4.
A miserable 2x4?
Yep. It's probably warped, too, full of termites and some kind of rodents.
Do you need to be reminded of the success that Mr. Duggan has had with Andre the Giant?
Oh, I got to take my hat off to anybody that picks up a 2x4 and hits the guy right between his running lights at 30 miles an hour, sucker punches him. Sure, anybody can do that. One-on-one, face-to-face, he'd have never done that.
Oh, no?
No. I understand he doesn't like to see the flag of Quebec waved either. Tough. This is the United States. Freedom of speech.
Mm-hmm. Well, don't be surprised if you see Hacksaw Jim Duggan waving Old Glory in the weeks to come.
All right, so here on Primetime, John, Bobby Heenan says Duggan has nothing but a rotted 2x4 filled with termites and rodents. Meanwhile, Dino Bravo has the strength of, well, basically the strongest man in the world, if you ask him. As Bobby says, Duggan, he doesn't like that Quebec flag? Tough. This is the United States. Freedom of speech. How many times did Bobby Heenan, the heel, make sense in what he was saying?
Almost all the time. You almost, when you actually think about it and go back and like, oh, I hated Heenan, or like he was always wrong. What a heel! What an asshole! All stuff. Then you go back, you listen, like he is technically right on like 99% of the time. Like he's pretty accurate. He pretty kind of like Duggan is an idiot. Like what is Duggan talking about? Like Heenan's right.
Well, Duggan, he's been working with the Cowboy a little too long, I guess. Boy, I just covered 86 UWF. That was something else, man. But right now, guys, we're going to go off to another soundbite. Our very first time listening to Mean Gene promote the return of the Survivor Series.
Co-captains, team survival. The World Wrestling Federation presents the Survivor Series, where teams of 5 strive to survive. Coming to you live Thanksgiving night, November the 24th, exclusively on pay-per-view.
And what a spectacular that's going to be on Thanksgiving night. You can bet Bobby the Brain Heenan will be right in the thick of things.
You bet I'll be there. You be there?
No question of that. You were in the thick of things very recently, as a matter of fact, when we mentioned at an earlier occasion that the $1 Million Man, Ted Dibiase, purchased.
Why do you have to keep bringing that up and throwing that up in my face? You're making me out to the people like I'm nothing more than a slave trader.
I would say you would have no regard for human flesh. I'd say that's pretty accurate. Let's take you now to the special update with Lord Alfred Hayes. I certainly hope you were paid well, Mr. Heenan, because it could very well be that Hercules could make you pay in a different fashion.
See, if he'd use all that energy waxing the Bentleys and the Rolls Royces, mowing the lawn, taking out the trash, he wouldn't have to concern himself with anything else. Like a stray dog. You take an old, dirty, mutt stray dog or an alley cat, eats out of the garbage cans and has no existence in life. Then you bring it into the house and let it sleep under a chair. Hey, it's better off than where it's been. Herc should be happy he's got a position now.
You're liking a human to an alley cat?
Okay, sewer rat. How's that?
But doesn't that send goosebumps down your spine, man, listening to those old you kind of get lost in that moment again when you were a kid and watching, the Survivor Series or WrestleMania. You see those little 10-second bumpers, what they did for you back in those days, it was simpler times, I suppose.
They say nostalgia isn't just like an emotion. It's like a true feeling, as far as like you actually feel it like through not only like your brain, but you feel it through your body. Like you said before, like even like maybe some arm tingles or something to that nature. But it really like takes over because it takes you back. Like, right? I mean, you see that literally for like 2 seconds, like, oh my God. And then like it kind of takes you back, gives you a good feeling. You love when you were a kid, you love watching it. I just love, that's why I love going back and watching the old stuff. Like, well, you've seen this a million times. Why do you? It's because that you get that feeling all over again. And it's not just, a little bit. It's like you feel it in throughout your whole body. I love like when they do like either the Survivor Series or WrestleMania or SummerSlam, summertime. I just love it. Nostalgia forever. It's so cool.
Yeah, it works for me as well, guys. We got a couple more sound bites here we're going to run through real quick. Right now, coming out of a Honky Tonk Man promo, we're going to hear what Bobby Heenan has to say about Honky Tonk and his troubles with the Warrior.
To the Honky Tonk Man, wants his belt back, wants the championship once again around his waist. What do you think his chances are, Bobby Heenan?
I think his chances are pretty good because he can prepare himself now for it. He didn't know he was going to be wrestling Honky Tonk. I mean, Warrior came in the ring. Him. Well, of course it bothered me. He came in the ring. He blindsided him. He didn't even get his outfit off. He didn't get even introductions. The referee didn't go through instructions. The Warrior went berserk.
Was it the Warrior's fault?
Well, it was the official's fault. Jack Tunney's fault. Somebody ought to be able to control this man.
Control the Warrior.
Control the Warrior, yes.
Do you think the Honky Tonk Man can control the Warrior?
If he's properly prepared with Jimmy Hart in his corner and they go over proper strategy, yes. He wasn't prepared to wrestle the Ultimate Warrior.
What about what we saw a few minutes ago being whacked by the guitar? Don't you think that's going to give the Warrior even that much more momentum?
That's what I call using your hand.
All right, so Bobby thinks that Honky Tonk Man, he has a good chance to regain the IC title because he wasn't given a chance to prepare for the Warrior at SummerSlam. As he says, all that Honky needs to do, this is all he needs to do, John. All he needs to do is control the Warrior. That's all. As Vince McMahon says, well, that's easier said than done, pal.
He does make a good point. Honky Tonk was not ready. He was caught off guard. So he is right again. He made a great point.
Yeah, we're going to see that time and time again right now. We're going to hear Vince McMahon coming out of the vignette. Once again, Mr. Perfect Bowling. This is Vince's take on Curt Hennig.
I'm impressed.
Oh, so am I. I like one thing he has. He has his own shirt. He doesn't have one of those bowling shirts with your name in the back, Al's Muffler Shop or something. I like that look. 300 game. How many times can you just roll them off like that?
Amazing. Gentleman has an awful lot of talent. I wonder what kind of talent he has in the squared circle.
Mr. Perfect. Hello.
Is it Mr. Perfect?
Mr. Perfect, what are you up to? I know, exactly. Oh, yeah, we just watched the bowling.
All right, so last week Gorilla was here. We saw Curt Hennig. I can't remember what he did last week already. I'm having a brain fart. But Gorilla that wasn't really impressive, Brain. If he did it, it was the running the balls, the billiards, if you will. Pool to us common folk. And so he ran the balls, and Gorilla said, now if he does that 125 times, that's perfect. But Vince McMahon, very impressed with the 300 game here by Curt Hennig, putting the gimmick over. And you kind of need to because, it's part of your product, right? So Vince selling the Mr. Perfect character as being possibly perfect.
I love this gimmick, and that Vince loved it because of the way he talks about it. It is so interesting when you really go back and now you look at it and know that Vince was the owner and the one kind of obviously in charge of pushing this guy and that guy. You could kind of see what he loved and what gimmick he didn't. And like when he talks about somebody, Red Rooster, Terry Taylor, it's kind of like sarcastic. Mr. Perfect, he's like, this guy is perfect. Like you could tell he was behind Curt Hennig.
Yeah, absolutely. Which is great, coming, especially, for Hennig's size. But Hennig had been here in the early 80s, working underneath. So he was in his first time here. And of course, second generation Larry the Axe. Right now, guys, we got one soundbite left this week coming out of a Brother Love segment with the Bobby Heenan, Terry Taylor shenanigans. History in the making here, John. We'll talk about it on the other side.
And this man is supposed to be full of love. Many would say, Mr. Heenan, that you might be full of something else other than love.
Intelligence? Yes, you've hit the nail on the head there. Imagine I'm going to take Terry Taylor. I'm going to change his whole career, change his whole style. I'm even giving him a new name.
You're going to give Terry Taylor a new name?
Correct. He's now known as the Red Rooster. How do you like that?
The Red Rooster.
The Red Rooster. And there's a meaning behind that.
Yes. We were going to ask you that. What is
but I won't tell you. I won't tell anybody. I will show everybody. But can you imagine, as busy as I am with Andre the Giant in the Survivor Series, as busy I am with Ravishing Rick Rude, as busy as I am with King Haku, other surprises I have, I'm going to take enough time out of my busy schedule to groom this man into a star.
Into a star. I don't know. That remains to be seen. We'll return with more World Wrestling Federation action.
All right, so here it was, guys. Mark your calendars, October 11th, 1988, right here on Primetime Wrestling, not on Superstars, but here on Primetime. So clearly they didn't even know what they were going to call him during the Superstars taping. But Bobby Heenan announces that from this day forward, Terry Taylor will be known as the Red Rooster. And of course, Vince McMahon going to add to this, like you said, kind of have some fun with it. Oh, what's the meaning behind that, pal? To which Bobby Heenan says, well, there is a meaning, but I'm not going to tell you. And so basically, right out of the gate, they dub him the Red Rooster, and Vince sets up the one-liner. Well, what does that mean? And it's well, it means something, but I'm not going to tell you what it means. And so with everything the Brain has going on right now, and more to come, tag team on its way, guys. Now he's going to acquire the services of Terry Taylor, the Red Rooster. So he is named here kind of throwaway as part of Primetime.
That's another thing, too. When you look at it, it's completely throwaway. It's almost like Heenan doesn't even know what to say because the creative didn't really give him anything. So, again, like a rib on top of a rib. To me, that's what it seems like. It's just so fascinating, so weird.
I wonder if they went to a commercial break there and Vince said, hey, now, Terry, you need to announce that Terry Taylor's new name is the Red Rooster. And Bobby's like, are you shitting me? Oh, my God.
Yeah, like, what?
Well, I know Bobby wasn't a fan of Terry, but, listening to Bobby shoots over the years, he either liked you or he didn't. I'll say that much about Bobby. And he didn't care for Terry Taylor too much. I guess he kind of felt like Taylor's ego kind of played in there. But we had a couple exclusive matches here this week on Primetime as well, guys. Both taped back October 6th, Toledo, Ohio at the Sports Arena. Jimmy Powers scoring a singles win over Chris Curtis with the Powers Slam. See what I did there? Match went 405. And the Big Boss Man over Frankie DeFalco in 241 with the Boss Man Slam. A couple of squash matches here this week. Usually we get a little more competitive matches here on Primetime, but take the good with the bad. But that's going to wrap it up here this week, guys, for everything going on in the second week of October 1988. And my God, I want to thank you so much, John, for sitting here with me, just talking good old school wrestling.
Hey, no problem. Great stuff. I love talking about wrestling, especially this era of wrestling, this Hogan era of wrestling, if you will. Great stuff. Yeah, I mean, this is the stuff that I can just watch on loop over and over and over. Just so entertaining, so good. Such great stuff. What a great era.
And you learn something new when you cover it week to week like this than when you watch it randomly or the way you remember it. Like you talked about, you didn't remember Heenan kind of burying Taylor on the Brother Love.
Yeah.
Nor did I. But I also, in my memory, remembered him dubbing him the Red Rooster on the Brother Love show, which did not happen. It was on Primetime and on Moving Forward. And so, of course, we're never going to get an explanation of that or why he kept that name, which was meant to bury him after he turned baby. I'll show you, Bobby Heenan. I'll keep that, and then I'll add a red comb to the middle of my hair.
Yeah, I'll make it even worse. Yeah,
and I'll start crowing, which I didn't even do as a heel. But it's
weird.
Looking forward to that in the weeks to come. And John, I hope you had a good enough time that we can invite you back here down the road because it was a blast. And I know you are a big fan of this era, and you kind of named the exact years, the exact pay-per-views that I just were my peak pinnacle of my memories and my childhood. And so it'd be just a great time to have you back here before too long for another episode. I want to thank you so much for taking time out and joining me on the WrestleCopia Podcast Network. But why don't you tell everybody a little bit about your podcast?
So you could follow me on Twitter and Instagram at 2-Man Power Trip for everything that's going on as far as what's going on all the shows. And the shows, of course, the Hogan Era, which is a weekly show talking about some of the greatest matches, moments, feuds, and wrestlers of that era, kind of breaking it down, putting in some clips, and much like what cool stuff you got going on. Then I've got my TMPT, the flagship show, and the feature show, which is 2 interviews I do a week. Could be anybody from past, present, future. Just the amount of names and legends that I've interviewed in the past is great. You never know who's going to be on the show. I got the 10th anniversary show. I'm not sure when this will technically air, but the 10th anniversary show will air, I believe it is January 7th. Okay. And the guest will be Bret the Hitman Hart. So that'll be very cool for the 10th anniversary show. Yeah, that's a pretty good one. Yeah. And then if you want to listen to the archives, Hulk Hogan's been on the show, the Nature Boy Ric Flair, Mick Foley, Terry Funk, Jerry Lawler, and Dusty Rhodes, of course, Jerry McDivitt. The list goes on and on. So I've been blessed and so lucky to have all these guys. I don't even know how the hell I've gotten some of these guys. It's just an amazing list.
Yeah.
And then, of course, a podcast, if you will. I do somewhat of a monthly show with Vince Russo as well, talking about some of the good, some of the bad, and quite frankly, some of the ugly from his career as well. And then taking to school with Dr. Tom Pritchard as well. You can go to patreon.com/TMPT Empire for more on that. And then TeePublic, too, if anybody wants a Hogan Era shirt, which is some cool merch. You go to tpublic.com/stores/TMPT.
I love it. All right, man. This is a guy who's done this a time or two.
Yes.
Oh, man. I don't have to remind anybody of their handles or anything. I love it, man. I appreciate you, man. Dude, I don't know what else to say except for it was a great time, man. I really had a lot of fun, and hopefully, everybody enjoys this. I'm sure they will. Instead of listening to just me talk to everybody for once. It's been a while. And so it was great having you on here, man. I'm looking forward to doing it again down the road here. Maybe another month or so, get into new feuds and more talent coming in, of course. Arn and Tully right around the corner. And just
my favorites, yeah.
And some other guys coming in by the end of the year, beginning of 89 as well. But yeah, that Boss Man Hogan feud, the initial issues haven't transpired yet here on the Grenade.
Yes,
but man, when we get to that, well, it's going to be
the cage matches. Oh man, yes.
Oh man, looking forward to that too. That may be a video cast on my upcoming my Patreon. Yeah, we do cover some things like that. So that would be a fun one to cover. Maybe we have you on there.
Hey, sure.
But yeah, that's going to wrap it up here this week on the Grenade Guys. Hope you guys enjoyed it. We'll be back with another week of October TV leading into the Survivor, slowly matriculating down the field on our way to the Survivor Series right now. And not too long before the Brainbuster is going to debut, but looking forward to that next time around. And just want to thank you one last time, John. Thanks for being here. Looking forward to talking to you again.
No problem. Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
John Poz, everyone. Got to thank him so much. Great times. Hope to have him back very soon. A man after my own heart. God, I love this era of the World Wrestling Federation. And right now, guys, it's time to wrap things up. Going to be back next week with yet a third week of October TV as we inch closer to the next edition of Saturday night's main event here in the next few weeks on the Grenade Guys. So much going on, and now we can add the Red Rooster, a rooster booster, if you will, to the factory here in the World Wrestling Federation. But for now, just a quick reminder, we encourage everybody to go over, follow us on social media. Follow me on X, formerly Twitter, at Wrestling Grenade. That's at RASSLIN Grenade. Also, follow and like me, Facebook.com/Wrestling Grenade. Of course, subscribe to YouTube.com/Wrestling Grenade. Check out TeePublic/user/WrestleCopia for all the latest WrestleCopia and Grenade related merchandise, from t-shirts to hats to tote bags to coffee mugs and everything in between. Go check that out right now. And of course, last but certainly not least, talking about Patreon.com/WrestleCopia. That $5 all access tier gets you so many gifts for just $5, but also the VIP Superfan tier is where it is at. All sorts of video casts right now over there on the VIP Superfan tier, including the Coliseum videocast with Gene Jackson, the Pro Wrestling Academy videocast with Dan Ginnity, of course, random other videocasts we've been putting together, and coming soon here in the early part of 2025, the return of Monday Warfare, but this time in videocast form. Going to be fun to go back and break down the Monday Night War right here at Patreon.com/WrestleCopia. VIP Superfan tier, guys. Check it out today. But with all of that said and out of the way, another week older here in 1988, moving our way to Saturday night's main event, moving our way to the Survivor Series, 1 week at a time. And we will be back next week for another week of October TV. But until then, this is Ray Russell saying, from pillar to post and coast to coast, you pull the pin and I'll pick up the pieces right here on the Wrestling Memory Grenade. See you next week. Don't miss it. Be there.
Wrestling's latest brother. Oh yes, and he is a brother. The only difference between me and him is that he's medium rare and I'm well done.
I'm going to change his whole career, change his whole style. I'm even giving him a new name.
You're going to give Terry Taylor a new name?
Correct. He's now known as the Red Rooster. How do you like that?
The Red Rooster.
The Red Rooster. And there's a meaning behind that.
Yes. We were going to ask you to get that. What is
but
I
won't tell you. I won't tell anybody.
Absolutely perfect.